Well, good evening. Welcome. Sorry for a couple minutes extra here. Well, as always, we are following COVID protocols and recommending that everyone attending wear a mask if you would like. For anyone who does not have a mask and would like one, they are available in the lobby. We'll also be keeping the exterior doors open because it's quite warm and trying to get some cross ventilation for health reasons as well as for a little bit of cooling down. So today we're going to call the regular meeting of the City Council to order and state that all members are present. Councilmember Marks is in a remote location in City Hall. Would Councilmember Pease please lead the council in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please rise as able. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. City Manager, would you like to present your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We got a short report tonight. I've just got one slide, a couple of slides this evening. First, want to just thank the council members and thank everyone who participated in our community academy graduation. We had some great feedback throughout the process. I know a lot of you who were able to attend heard firsthand the kind of reports back from our first academy graduate. They gave us 5 out of 5 stars on all of our surveys and trying to curate a program that was exciting and informative and really helped them get a better understanding of the city of San Luis Obispo. I just want to share with you some of the outcomes. 78% of the participants said that they were interested in joining an advisory body. And a stat that our HR friends would be happy about, 63% of the respondents indicated increased interest in working for the city of San Luis Obispo. So it was overall a great experience. We intend to have another one next spring. And so one of the asks for all the graduates is that they tell a friend about the program, and hopefully that we have some continued interest moving forward. Moving to the next slide, just want to share with you an annual event that comes to the city, which is a Clean Up Week. So just to remind everyone, as part of your trash service to your property, free of charge, allow up to 6 standard trash cans, 32 gallons each, or 6 standard trash cans equivalent stored in other containers, or 6 bundles each 4 feet less in length and 75 pounds or less in weight. So we also include some bulky items that are listed there on the screen. I won't go through all of those. You may see special patrols out there as well. So if there's an errant couch, please report it to our utilities department. If you go to our how to report or report on our website, you can get a hold of our utilities department. And so if you see any abandoned furniture that's not out there for pickup, we do try to go out and pick stuff up. And so with our San Luis garbage. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. And I am going to invite Chief Agson up and talk about another time of the year, what we're trying to get people motivated about, given the dry circumstances and slow weed abatement time.
Yeah, well, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So it is that time of the year for weed abatement. It is year-round for us, so we always want everybody to be able to maintain their weeds and keep debris from their homes. Specifically this year, we were looking at a June 1st cutoff date, and so where we've had in the past, we've had a complaint-based program where our prevention folks will go out in the community as we get calls from neighbors that are complaining about an open lot or something that we recognize, and then we'll follow up with that property owner and we'll ask them to get those weeds cut. They typically have a 30-day turnaround, and if they're not cut, then we'll assign somebody. We'll hire somebody, and then that's charged to the property owner. We're in a position right now where we're hiring a half-time inspector, so we're just finishing up with backgrounds. That half-time inspector is going to be doing all of our AB 1208 inspections, which is essentially all of our apartments and our hotels, and then that new person will also be doing our weed abatement. So we'll transition in 2023 to more of a proactive based, where we'll be sending something out with the water bill in May, indicating that, hey, it's time to cut your weeds and get prepared, create that defensible space and push them to our different websites. And then in the end of May, we'll start our initial inspections of the city, and in June we'll do the follow-ups. And so that's some of the utilization of that new inspector we're excited about. In addition, we do have properties that the city owns, and so Public Works has been getting around to all those properties and getting those weeds cut as well. There's some areas in the railway right-of-way that still need to be done, and there's some sections behind Sinsheimer Baseball Park that they're also working on. So we're moving forward on it. Next slide. It's also that time for the 4th of July, and with that comes fireworks. And fireworks are not legal in the city of San Luis Obispo, even if they're safe and sane. And so what we're asking all of our community members is that, you know, if they do know of anybody that's setting fireworks off, a neighbor, even if it's before the 4th, is to please call the business line of the police dispatch area dispatch line, so that we can have both law enforcement and our fire prevention folks, we can follow up with that. There are several great programs in our county, Morro Bay, Pismo Beach, that we encourage people to go to. But with fireworks, it is a very challenging thing for us to be able to identify who's doing it and to cite. And so just this afternoon, where I received an email from a community member that was inquiring, like, hey, what are we doing? We know Santa Maria is doing a little bit different program. We did meet with the chief of Santa Maria about a month ago. They're doing a drone-based program, and they have the ability to get up about 500 feet. And then when they identify an APN or an address that's shooting fireworks, they're able to fly over. They can get video and photographs. And then last year, they cited 14 people. So they're still in the trial period. There's some challenges with airports, and so we can't fly close within the airport zone, and we can't fly above that 500-foot cap. And so there's some challenges with our topographies, a little bit different than Santa Maria, but we're certainly going to look into it. And then there's also some FAA requirements to be able to fly drones, which we weren't aware of. So, and that's it. If we do locate people with fireworks, they can be cited for it, and it's about $1,000 fine. And then that's it with the 2 slides. The last thing I just wanted to share with you is the mobile crisis unit. They had their first full week last week, and we've been incredibly thrilled with the work that they're doing and the outreach that they've already provided. So we've had some hotspot areas in our community, mainly down in Monterey Street, the Mission, the Elks area, and so we've reached out. We've made contact with business owners on Monterey. We've been tapping on shoulders in the Mission area, you know, encouraging people to receive service. So they gave me a report out last week. We're calling it our success report. We had 7 proactive outreach contacts. Some of that was in open space. Some of that was in Mission Plaza. We had 2 people that received service. So they accepted service and were transported. And so we're still kind of building the plane as we're flying right now, and in terms of where we take everybody and where they can get immediate service. But we're getting there. So that was some good positive feedback we got. We had 2 individuals that reached back out to our case manager via phone instead of calling 911 to get some support. And one of those individuals, we actually assisted them in getting their medication. So they had some medication they needed to get picked up for some behavioral problems that they had. So pretty thrilled about that. This morning, uniquely enough, we had an individual that made his way up to the top of REI. He was nude. He had taken all his clothes off, and he was up there, and it was scaring everybody that was down in the parking lot. They thought he may want to jump. PD was on scene. They requested fire. They requested the MCU right when they came in to duty this morning, and we had a successful operation. So our case manager was able to make contact with PD, get a little bit of a pass on what was going on, and then make contact with the individual, and then we were able to talk him back down. They were able to bring him back through the access ladder for the roof for the building, get him down to the ground. So, you know, we felt good about that. It's, again, those are all little steps that we're taking right now, but you know, as I mentioned, we're kind of building the plane, and we're learning. There's a lot of things we thought may go one way, we have to do a little bit different. So overall pretty thrilled with that. The last thing I wanted to share is that the end of July, Fire Marshal Maggio, our new emergency manager, James Blattler, myself, we're going to be doing Ready, Set, Go and Defensible Space information training in the community. So we'll be up in the Johnson area. We're going to be doing Bishop's Peak area as well as Irish Hills. And that will be 3 consecutive days. We're looking at about an hour and a half to 2 hours each evening, and we've got some schools that we've identified that we're going to be hosting that. So we'll get that information out to the public. And then the last thing, in terms of fireworks and weed abatement, we are working with our communication team to get information out to everybody as to what's required. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And then I just want to invite Whitney Santisi, our communications manager, and talk a little bit about our website refresh project.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Whitney Santisi. I'm the Public Communications Manager. I'm happy to share with you today a quick update on our website. So the city's website, the last time we did a full redesign was in 2015. And it's been, quite a few changes have happened since then with website usability as well as ADA compliance and accessibility. And so we're looking at refreshing our design and our content to make it a little bit more accessible to all people in San Luis Obispo. So we're not doing a full redesign right now. We are doing just a refresh. A full redesign would really be looking at the entire foundation of if you think about it like a house, and rebuilding the walls from the foundation up. Instead, we're keeping the walls, we're keeping the rooms the way that they are, maybe rearranging some furniture, but also slapping a new coat of paint on it and making it a little bit more accessible, widening the driveway, widening some sidewalks, so to speak. The most significant change will happen to the homepage, and we'll show you a quick little preview in just a moment. But the project status, normally with a project like this, we would do a full kind of user survey and looking at heat mapping and analytics. This time around, we reviewed heat map data to see how people were using our website. We also reviewed Google Analytics to see how people were flowing through our website, which pages they were looking at, which content maybe wasn't rising to the top of searches and wasn't rising to the top of our overall user base. We've been cleaning up content for the last several months, and that includes looking at all of our documents, and I really want to thank staff for the heavy lift that they've done in cleaning all of that content up and looking at all of the broken links and fixing all of that stuff. And we finalized a wireframe and freshened up the design, so I'm happy to show you a little preview of the new homepage design. We are going from that non-scrolling kind of single page kind of design to that scrolling design. This, as more and more people are using social media, they're becoming more accustomed to scrolling through websites to find what they're looking for. And so we want to make sure that our homepage specifically has certain sections that are easy to find, that are responsive to mobile design, and that also can be expandable and usable and adaptable, thank you, as we move forward. And so we're gonna have a new hero image and section that is multimedia, that will allow for videos as well as full banner. We're having new buttons, and everything will be ADA compliant, and also everything will be translatable. So we'll have an English-Spanish translation and at the click of a button. So I'm really excited to move forward with this project. In terms of go live, we're currently under development in terms of bringing this design to life, and that will take a couple of months. And we plan to go live in September or October. Thank you.
Thank you, that's great news.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and that concludes the city manager report tonight. If there's any questions, happy to field those. Or
I do have one question for the chief. You mentioned if you see fireworks that you give someone a call. I'm assuming that's the non-dispatch number?
Yeah, so if it's not an emergency, if there's not an actual fire, which would compel 911, yeah, then it would be the 781-7317 or 7312 number that you can call. So
1-2.
just so you know, in Google it's 17. So
Good to know.
and I share that because
We'll correct that on the website.
okay. Either one of those will get you to a dispatcher, and then they'll send the appropriate resources. It really, and just to kind of emphasize, it really is difficult to cite for fireworks unless we physically see them lighting the fireworks. So really the best action that we get most often is just confiscating, just collecting what they have and confiscating them, so.
Thank you. I know we've received some emails with frustration around the fact that there is not as much citing for fireworks that have been seen. So if someone takes a video, does that work? Does that help you?
I don't know. It's a good question.
It is helpful, and that's typically going to be handled through contacting a police officer, providing that evidence to the police officer, and participating in the citizen complaint process.
Thank you so much.
And just really, and that's it. We need people to call. We need people to call. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions? Jan, I'm sorry, Councilmember Marks, do you have any questions? Councilmember Marks, do you have any questions for the city manager report?
Has me on mute.
Can you hear us now? Gotta love technology, right?
Councilmember Marks, can you hear? It keeps muting. That's what happened.
Hear me. They can't hear me. So she has me on.
We can hear you. Well, we can move forward to public comment, and then if Councilmember Marks has a question, we can come back to that. Greg, did you?
Want to delay the meeting? Tell them just to go on. I have no questions.
All right, we can hear you. Thank you. Did you have any questions, Councilmember Marks?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, now I can hear too. Okay.
Sorry.
Do we have any public, this is the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to provide a public comment and haven't turned in your speaker card, you still have time. You can give it to the city clerk right now. And city clerk, do you have, oh, it looks like we have someone.
No, we do not.
No, that's 5F, never mind. Thank you so much. I'm also trying new technology. All right, so we'll move forward to consent agenda. And consent calendar items are consisting of matters deemed routine and non-controversial by staff. However, if a member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual consideration, all items will, they can, or all items will be approved by one motion. Councilmember Marks, could we take a quick?
Yes, I would like to say that City Farm Slow is receiving a $5,000 grant, and my husband is the president of that nonprofit. I'm not going to recuse myself. I think I can be objective in terms of voting on item 5C.
And
Great.
I'll just note for the record that recusal is compelled by financial interest. This is an uncompensated position for a nonprofit and therefore not a disqualifying financial interest under the act.
Thank you, City Attorney. Councilmember Marks, do you have anything you'd like to pull from the consent agenda?
No, I don't. I did have a comment about 5E, which is just, I'm very happy that the amended Joint Powers Agreement for Integrated Waste Management Authority is moving through the ratification process, and there are only a few outstanding CSDs that need to actually approve this matter. So I am definitely in favor of passing 5E. Outside of that, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Christensen.
Yes, thank you. I would like to pull 5C, the GIA grants and aid.
Thank you. 5C will be pulled. And nope, okay. Councilmember Pease.
Thank you. Let's see, we're pulling 5C. I guess I just want to not pull, but make a comment about 5J, which is the parking structure. And there was some really helpful agenda correspondence about that item and the timing for the demolition of the Hyde adobe, and just the great above and beyond effort by staff to see if that old, it's a bitumen adobe, if it could find a new home, if it could be relocated. Unfortunately, a new home has not come forward, so just want folks to be aware that there will be demolition, documentation, and then demolition of that building. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to, before we go into voting, I just want to say thank you to the individual in 5F who has donated the carpeting for the History Center of San Luis Obispo County. So thank you so much. And now we have public comment for the consent agenda items. And I have Thomas Kessler for 5F.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Thomas Kessler. I'm the Executive Director of the History Center of San Luis Obispo County. We are proud to be the tenants of the city and indeed the stewards of the historic Carnegie Library building at 696 Monterey Street. We are confident that if we had to, we could work with the city and we could find funding to replace our carpets. It really is time. The high traffic areas are very much a different color than the rest of the carpet. There are some tearing in the seams, but fortunately we have just an amazing donor who has stepped forward and has offered to completely cover the costs. We have worked with city staff to identify vendors that are approved to work with the city, and we look forward to moving forward with that. And as long as I'm standing in front of you, I will also just sort of comment that we at the History Center are in support of the Cultural Arts District parking structure and look forward to having Slow Rep be our neighbors at Monterey Street. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, any other? Okay, thank you so much. So Vice Mayor Christensen.
I'll go ahead and move consent agenda except for item 5C, which we'll discuss next.
Councilmember Shorsman.
I'll second that.
City Clerk, can you call roll?
Vice Mayor Christensen,
Yes?
Councilmember Shorsman,
Yes.
Councilmember Pease,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
I'm saying yes. Can you hear me?
Mayor Stewart.
Thank you, Councilmember Marks, and yes.
Okay.
Moves 5-0. Thank you so much, everybody. And thanks all for your patience as we go through this technology fun. Okay, so moving forward, we'll go through 5C. Vice Mayor Christensen.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate the work that the HRC, the Human Relations Commission, did on that, and our staff. But I had a couple tweaks I was hoping to make, and I've talked about this with Councilmember Shorsman. I have not talked about it with any other council members, and I kind of thought about these things before we received our late agenda correspondence also. So I was hoping to fully fund the Slow City Farms Youth Program. They asked for 15 and they only got 5, and I would like to make sure they get that additional $10 million. I think $10,000. $10 million. Dang. You can see where I'm living, in a fantasy world. 10,000. I had $10 million written down there, but that was meant to be a K, not an M. Yeah, we got that measured G20. It's paying for, it's paying for everything. No, I'm thinking about that homeless thing next. Where's that noise coming from? Oh, sorry. So what I want to do is I want to take it from the pregnancy and parenting Alpha money. They were ordered $12,000, and I would like to bring that down to $5,000, which is what they got last year, or down to zero. And I also would like to not fund the French Hospital Foundation, $15K. I would like to give that money to a smaller, more destitute organization. So I was hoping that the council would support me in reallocating that money for Slow City Farm from pregnancy and parenting, and then would maybe help me decide where some extra money would come from, the other $2,000 from pregnancy and parenting, and the $15K for French. That's my idea. Let's see what you guys think.
I would love to hear from the staff designee if there's anything that had been kind of the alternate next steps, if that was, if we decided to make any changes. So I figure whatever the committee has decided as thoughts for options would be good to hear.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having us this evening. I'm just here to give some general comments and then also introduce a few of the staff members and commissioners that we have that are able to help you navigate this conversation. First and foremost, I just want to reiterate to the council that there's full discretion. The HRC evaluated the information that they had available via the applications, the identified priorities, and that's the recommendation that you have before you this evening. But the council is able to make any modifications that it sees fit. We have Bea Makakau, who's our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager, who was the facilitator for the HRC through the process, then our vice chair, Angie Kasperzak, who can provide some commentary, who was both on the subcommittee that reviewed the applications initially and made the recommendations to the HRC, and then ultimately a part of the full vote from the HRC on this item.
Thank you. And Vice Chair, I apologize, I didn't see you out there.
Hi, Mayor and council members. I would add, and then I'll let our vice chair speak to any additional details to your question if there were other alternative options. The one that really rose to the top was one that you've already spoke to, which was City Farm to potentially give more funding, if not fully fund that program. Currently has a $5,000 allotment, which would need an additional $10,000. The amount in question would be the $15,000 from French plus the additional $12,000. So there would be a remainder of a significant amount of dollars that I would say, based on the discussion we had, there's not an obvious one that really rose, so I think that would warrant additional discussion unless directed by you all to allocate the remaining dollars from, if we were to pull funding from French and the remaining from the parenting support program. I'll let Vice Chair Kasperzak add any additional context.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Angie Kasperzak, Vice Chair for the Human Relations Commission. I wanted to first say that we have spoken about City Farm, and it was our intent to fund them. Mateo Trujillo spoke, and he was one of the graduates from the Youth Empowerment Program who has moved on and is going to Cuesta and is now very impassioned about sustainability and engineering, and it also focuses on DEI, bringing more DEI into every level of agriculture, not just at the bottom. And there was one more thing. Oh, and they offer everything in English and Spanish. So they hit most of our priorities, and we did talk about fully funding them, ended up with just the $5,000. I have no real strong feelings about the pregnancy and parenting support, but why did we fund the French Hospital? A lot of people might say they're a huge organization with millions and millions of dollars, overbilling for healthcare. But this program specifically is not funded by them. It's funded solely through donations and grants. Based on the application, it hits all of our priorities, specifically going above and beyond the usual care for homeless patients. Councilmember Pease has attended some of the homeless outreach that I do at Mitchell Park, and has met some of my friends that are houseless living downtown area. It has been invaluable to them. There's many that have taken advantage of the program that we hear about after the fact. They'll go missing for a week, for 2 weeks, for a couple months, and then when they come back, they'll tell stories of how their foot was amputated, and then they got an extended care through French Hospital's program at a local hotel, or that they were given medical supplies and just life needs so that they can transition back to the streets after their hospital care is finished. So because of my work with the homeless, if I was able to, I would fully fund their program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vice Mayor Christensen.
Yes, I really appreciate the comments from staff and from our vice chair, and thank you so much. You know, I come from a long background in hospitals and medical care, and also I work at TEMA. And the thing about it is we have not funded the French Hospital Foundation before because they're kind of required to do that kind of stuff. They really are doing it anyway, and you see Sierra Vista doing the same thing. So the idea isn't that the program isn't valuable, because it certainly is, and it is extremely well appreciated, but they're going to fund it anyway. It's not going to matter whether we give them that money. But for other organizations, in my mind, it will matter. And so that's why I'm interested in this. It's not because I don't think that they're doing great work. It's that they're doing great work and they haven't needed our money up until now, and I don't want to start giving it to them. I think they've got plenty. And they have got lots of fantastic donors, too, that support the efforts that don't come to them through their insurance and other payers. So anyway, that's the reasoning behind that. It's not because I don't care about the program. It's because I don't think that they're the ones that need that money. I think that they have and they will continue to do that, not only for legal reasons, but because it's great preventative health care for them. That way people don't end up back in the hospital, which costs them even more. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm still with that. So any...
Councilor Pease.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your bringing up potential shifts there. I do support the City Farm fully funding. I think that is a great example of local impact, as you say, checking many of the boxes. I think I can see both sides of the French Hospital. It's their foundation, but and they are doing important work. And if I guess I'm wondering if we have enough information to, one, shift away from that program to really know, will that work continue without this kind of support? And then the other is the pregnancy program, formerly Alpha, and pregnancy and parenting support. And we've heard some concerns about that organization, that they might not be a full, pregnancy counseling center as much as a crisis pregnancy center that could be subject to an alert, a consumer alert that was put out by Attorney General Bonta. So that was information that we've received just today, and I would feel uncomfortable. Well, I'm just in this moment, because I don't really know this organization, know if that really is a concern. So if we are shifting because we think there are other priorities, I'm okay with that. This group needs it more than that group. Okay, but if we are shifting it because of some of these concerns that were brought up, I don't know that they've had an opportunity to respond. So that's not decisive, but points of discussion.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Shorsman.
Adding some more points of discussion, perhaps. But if I understand the proposal correctly, SLO City Farm needs $10,000 to be fully funded. The proposal is to take that money from the parenting pregnancy program. That would leave $2,000 left to fully fund the City Farm just using their funds. We've also talked about the $15,000 to French. So there's roughly $17,000 that we could play with, so to speak, if we fully fund the City Farm and reallocate the rest of those two pots of money So I'm wondering, because I have lots of questions about, there are lots of organizations that were not fully funded, small local nonprofits that do great work as well. And so I'm wondering, without sitting here and micromanaging, so to speak, that $17,000, if it would be possible and realistic for the council to say, take that money back to the HRC to decide or make recommendations on how to disperse that 17,000 amongst the projects maybe that they didn't fully fund. It's just an idea.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the questions I had was, if we say yes to the GIA program, short of maybe 5 that we have questions about, can that hold off? And can we have HRC come back to that and look at it and tell us what they think? But before I add too much more Councilmember Marks, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yay, okay. Well, I have to say, I think the $10,000 going to City Farm would be very helpful. It's a great program. It's going right now, and the students also get paid for their farm labor when they're there. So it's for many of them the beginning, the first time they've had a real job. So I also understand the reasoning behind wanting to not fund French hospital program. That's my inclination anyway when I've worked with other groups giving out charitable donations. I do want to speak up in favor of the parenting program from the point of view of I've had experience as a family member who, without going into great detail, when a woman finds herself with a baby and no money, and it has to have things like clothing, car seats, and strollers, and things like that. Alpha at the time was very, very helpful to this family I'm considering. I don't think it's one of these counseling centers. I think it has to do with actually helping people who have babies and very little financial resources. So that's my understanding. It could be old information, but I would go back to the 5,000 that they asked for, or that they had earlier. In terms of the 17,000, I would like to fully fund the SLO Children's Museum program, which is helping the homeless children. And it's a great resource. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, for some reason, they asked for 6,252. It's kind of an odd number. They were granted 5,115, and again, I don't know where that number came from, but basically, it's free admission for homeless children to the Children's Museum. I'd like to fund that. And that's all I have to say right now. Sending it back to the HRC would also make sense if we have money that we cannot allocate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marks. SLO Children's Museums, number 23.
Well, let's see. How about keeping the pregnancy and parenting at the last year's funding levels, 5,000, 7,000, then the other 7,000 goes to the city farm, and then 3,000 of the French money goes to the city farm, and that leaves, let's see, 12 for the SLO, well, at least, how much for the SLO Museum? Another couple, 1,200, and then the rest of it go back to the HRC? Is that too small of an amount? Yeah. Okay.
I feel like it's a really tiny amount for them to discuss.
All right. Well,
I mean, there's always, people's self-help housing has their support programs. They asked for 25,000 and were awarded 7,500. That's
All right,
always,
do it that
anything
way.
left over.
Yeah,
They're a great
yeah.
organization, fabulous program.
I was people,
Okay.
either people self-help housing or slow NOR, because those kind of go with our housing or homelessness priorities. So
yeah.
I would feel comfortable with either of those.
Okay, split the difference between the last two? Got that? All right.
That works for me. How
Okay,
about
so I'm
you,
gonna make a
Councilmember
motion.
Schwarzman? Yeah?
All right, we're gonna approve I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the GIA HRC funding recommendations with the following changes. We're gonna take $7,000 from pregnancy and parenting and give that to the city farm. We're gonna take $2,000 from the French Hospital, no, $3,000 from the French Hospital and give that to the city farm. The other $12,000 from French Hospital, we're gonna award the Children's Museum, whatever 6252 minus 5115 is. I can't do math. $1,100, whatever. And then whatever's remaining, we're dividing between
People self-help.
people self-help
And the
and
NOR clinic.
NOR Clinic. Got it.
Perfect.
That's
That
the
works for
motion.
me.
Do I have a second?
Councilmember Schwarzman? Yeah.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Christensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwarzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Pease,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Mayor Stewart.
Yes, thank you so much. The motion passes 5-0, and thank you so much to the HRC and everyone involved in making these plans and recommendations. Okay. Now we have a great item coming in front of us. This will be the homelessness response update and regional collaboration. And I believe and Michael Codron and Homelessness Response Manager Kelsey Knockett, please present the report.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart and members of council. Good evening. My name is Michael Codron. I'm the Director of Community Development. As you know, housing and homelessness response is a major city goal that the city staff is working to complete. There are a large number of very important tasks associated with that effort, one of which is the development of a strategic plan. Developing a strategic plan is an effort that requires significant regional coordination. And of course, the County of San Luis Obispo is the lead organization in terms of regional coordination and collaboration on this effort. And so it's important to note that, and we're excited to have tonight get to hear a status report from the county about those efforts. But first, Kelsey Knockett, the city's homelessness response manager, will review some work to date and provide an introduction and let you know the status of those efforts. So I'll turn it over to Kelsey for the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm just going to run us through a couple of quick slides to give a quick update on the progress we have made since I last presented in a study session in November. So before I get to that, I just wanted to give a quick overview of how we will be presenting this agenda item because it's a little unorthodox since we have staff from the county presenting as well. So first I will give a quick update. After that, the county will give a presentation on the county-wide strategic planning effort. Sure. I'm going to resume. Following their presentation, we will turn to council for your questions for staff and for the county presenters. After that, we recommend going to public comment, and then we will return to council for discussion. Okay. So this is just a quick refresher on what we discussed back in November. We, as a city, are working on a city-level strategic plan to address homelessness. And part of that is a continuous implementation methodology. What that means is that we're not waiting for a written plan to start taking action. This issue is far too urgent to put it on hold and wait for a written report. So as we are writing the plan, we are engaging in actions that fall in line with the plan's major objectives. So this little check mark that you see at the top of that larger circle indicates where we were back in November, which was at the very tail end of conducting a gaps assessment and troubleshooting for areas where there were low-hanging fruit that we might address more immediately. From there, we have worked on developing more of a vision for how we see success when it comes to addressing and preventing homelessness within the city. And now you'll see that green circled area is strategy development, and we are solidly within that realm at this stage. But part of all of this in the methodology is that it's a flowing sort of piece where we go back to visioning as needs change. It's flexible so that as we're writing the report, we can adapt to what the needs of the community are. So, as you may recall, Council approved these 5 key components of our strategic planning effort, which were data, communications, pilot programs, funding opportunities, and regional collaboration. We've done a ton of work in each of these, so I'm just going to present a quick highlight of where we are with each of these areas. And of course, the highlight of this presentation is regional collaboration, which is why the county is here to present alongside us. So in terms of data, I've been working with staff in our tech and GIS teams to develop a new data collection app that will streamline outreach efforts and communication between multiple departments that have direct interaction with our unhoused community members. In terms of communication, you'll see in attachment C of your packet, we've been working on a slow resource guide. It's a pocket guide that folds down to basically 2 credit card size cardstock, and it unfolds into, on one side, a map of where all the resources within the city are located. And on the other side, it has useful key information for what we're referring to as primary resources. So things like, where can I get a vaccine for my pet? Where can I get a cell phone? How do I get my ID? There's a whole flow chart to make that process much easier. So we consulted with outreach, the outreach coordinator from Capslow Jr., who pretty much everyone knows downtown on a first name basis. And he really helped influence what information was key for that first engagement. And we plan to have this resource guide be distributed by city staff. In terms of pilot programs, we are very excited to have the mobile crisis unit online, as Chief Agson mentioned earlier today. We have Keanu Morrison, who is our EMT, and Erin Smith, who is our caseworker contracted through TEMA. They've, as you heard Chief Agson mention, they've already been responding to many different calls and doing a wonderful job, so we're very excited to have them on board. Finally, for funding opportunities, we're working with local nonprofits and private foundations as new funding source potential to engage in grants such as Home Key and emergency services grants through the CARE Act. So with that, we'll turn the rest of this presentation to focus on regional collaboration, and I'll turn back to Mayor Stewart.
Great, thank you so much. Now I would like to introduce Supervisor Dawn Ortiz-Legg to introduce all of the attendees from the county.
Good evening. Hello, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, audience. It's good to see all your staff here. Supervisor Dawn Ortiz-Legg from San Luis Obispo, District 3, and we are honored to be here with you tonight and to share what the staff has been up to and stuff. I'm just here to kind of, just say that we understand the impacts, as we just experienced, of everything that we're going through, particularly in the cities as well as anywhere in all through the county. What I really think is important is that the number one determinant in success with homelessness is when we have all entities moving together. And I think we're finally getting there in a sense. We're really seeing some strategy. Kelsey, just outlining your strategy we finally at the county, on behalf of the board, I'm speaking that we came up with a strategy and leadership role, which I think is really critical. And then, we have our nonprofits here. We have some work to do, I think, with the businesses, but together, I think when we move forward, we can really get some results. So with that, I'm just going to introduce the chair of our Homeless Services Oversight Committee. This is City Councilwoman Susan Funk. So again, city's involved, just like your city and her city, and I believe she's on the line. And so, Susan, are you there to take over from this point?
Thank you very much, Supervisor Ortiz-Legg. Wave if you can hear me.
We can, thank you.
And I want to express my appreciation to Mr. Johnson and the staff and the mayor for making it possible for me to join you telephonically while I'm on vacation. And I'm here because it is, we all know how urgent this is. And I'm hoping that the first slide of the presentation is up. I can't see the slides on YouTube, so except I can see the slides over Kelsey's shoulder there. So anyway, we are at a point in developing this plan, a point of the confluence of real urgency and also of significant opportunity. The urgency is obvious. We know that the toll of homelessness on individuals cuts their lifespan by decades and creates all kinds of health challenges and trauma. Homelessness creates a toll on our community. I understand you've just had a demo of that. Our constituents want their public spaces back. And our businesses want to be able to operate in a sane environment. And the expansion of encampments and unhoused individuals on our streets damages our tourism and diminishes our quality of life. So and the environmental impacts are clear to anyone who has fished a grocery cart out of a creek or looked at the bills that you have to pay for trash removal. At the same time, this is also a moment of opportunity because we have new funding coming in from the state. The next tranche of money is $4.3 million approximately countywide, and other funds are potential coming as well. And as Supervisor Ortiz-Legg just mentioned, we are at a time of real opportunity politically where the urgency is being felt in every corner of this county, and it enables us to get unanimous support from the current Board of Supervisors for the guts of this plan, and a real sense of motion in all areas of the county to address this serious issue. So, next slide, please. We have, in this process, we've established the vision that I won't read it out to you because I trust that you can see it, but we recognize that we must address the trauma of homelessness on the individual and on the community and on the environment if we are to succeed. And we've staked out a goal of reducing homelessness to 50% of the current level within 5 years, even knowing that the county's been adding about 200 people a year to the rolls of persons who are homeless. So that despite facing a growing problem, we believe that we can and must make that change. Next slide, please. The steering committee that has been working on this plan includes representations from city and county members from all parts of the county, different regions, also home services providers. I understand that Ann Robin, who is on the steering committee, is in the audience tonight and will be available to answer questions that may come up from staff or the community with regard to any part of the plan, but particularly in terms of impacts on mental health and behavioral health. And I want to thank you for sharing Kelsey Knockett with us. to participate in the development of this countywide plan. Next slide, please. In order to understand where we are, we felt that the quickest way was simply to look at where were we countywide pre-pandemic versus where are we now? Next slide. And by that simple metric, we see in looking at homelessness that we've had a significant expansion of capacity during this period. There was the Motel 6 conversion in Paso Robles that added 50 new shelter beds, and expansions also in Atascadero, plus expansions in Capslow that you funded, and new safe parking there that the city of SLO has invested in. And the county also has expanded the parking village with the 90 people being accommodated now out on Oklahoma Avenue. And very soon we'll have those 20 new cabins for change in Grover Beach. At the same time, homelessness has been growing, and it is growing faster. That, as I mentioned, about 200 additional people per year that come into the system more than we are able to see exiting into housing or resolution. We found in our 2019 point in time count, there were nearly 1,500 homeless individuals in the county observed, and nearly 1,200 of them were unsheltered. We're still waiting for the 22 numbers. We've also seen that many of the resources that have expanded some of these efforts and expanded the outreach recently have been supported by COVID money that is now running its course. So there's concern by providers about being able to sustain the expanded operations we've already had, in addition to staffing challenges that all of our human services organizations are facing. Next slide, please. In terms of housing, we've seen a similar dynamic. Some great new resources, new vouchers, new units under construction. You just did a ribbon cutting or groundbreaking on a new asset there at Tiburon Place. But at the same time as we've expanding housing options, the market itself is tight with extraordinarily low vacancy rate, less than 3%, and our very high-cost county in terms of housing. Rents are up 13.5% in the last year and 46% since 2016. So we've reached a point where the median rental household in the county spends 38% of their income on housing. And that means that 50% of all of the rental households, or more than half, are at substantially increased risk of homelessness because of the strain that cost of housing puts on family budgets. We also have seen that the cost per unit of constructing new affordable housing in a more traditional method through big projects funded by tax credit financing like People's Self-Help Housing often does, that cost is now exceeding $550,000 a unit in our jurisdictions. So we need to be thinking differently if we are going to move ourselves out of this situation. Next slide, please. What we've reached with the expansions in capacity, we see that despite all of these new changes, on any given night, the best we can shelter is 20 to 30% of the number of homeless people that as they were counted in 2019. And we know that that number is likely to have grown. So what we see is it's not that the individual efforts aren't good. The vouchers are great. The new housing is excellent. It is that the scale of effort is not, the efforts are not scaled to the challenge. Basically, we brought a garden hose to a house fire. Next slide, please. So as we move forward to address those challenges, the plan, which is now up in full online on the HSOC website for public comment, the plan is sequenced so that in the initial year, we're really going to focus on a significant increase in sheltering and interim housing capacity, because that can be delivered more quickly. And work on prevention and also on data. And data because, as Kelsey mentioned, being able to get the data to understand this problem is an important challenge, but also it is what you haven't seen in this presentation. Now, what we might all be looking for of that nice refined picture of how many people have drug addiction versus mental health challenges versus largely economic challenges, the age mix, where people are physically located, where they came from originally, all of that, and where people are getting stopped in the system. That level of detail we don't have to the level of sophistication that we need in order to do the kind of data-driven management that this situation cries out for. So that's an important objective at the beginning, to get the data so we could better manage. Then we'll move to expansion of additional services for our specialty populations, and get the data in place to have a real regional compact so that everybody knows, each city knows and the county knows what everybody's fair share of this challenge is and how are we getting the resources to the right places. And then that should be more stable by the time we get to years 4 and 5, and we'll be really trying to bring on the housing capacity that we've been working on all along, but it takes years to get those projects actually built and in place. Next slide, please. So at the more granular level of detail, you can see that we're emphasizing in our first 12 months rapid implementation of more non-congregate sheltering or housing capacity of any number of types. That can include pallet shelters or cabins, tiny homes, safe parking. It could include conversions of other spaces. It could include sober living houses or other things that might work in coastal areas where new assets might be a challenge. We're also going to seek funding and working for staffing to expand services for mental health and substance abuse disorders, as Ann can address if you have questions. And we're going to do all of that to lay the groundwork for the regional compact. So notice that a lot of action is happening first. We're not waiting for the compact in order to start taking action. The compact will help guide the next level of action. Next slide. So as we put these in place, the coordination of this work happens at 3 different levels. There's the Homeless Services Oversight Council will continue to play a very active role, and in fact play a more active role at strategic level planning and oversight. But HSOC meets every 2 months, and it's a 3 screens of Zoom meeting. So we can't count on that for the rapid problem solving that's needed for the implementation work. So that's a new group that Joe will tell you about, the Action Committee. And then what you don't see on this side, because this was developed through the Board of Supervisors, is the Citizens Oversight Council or entity that the Board of Supervisors are working to craft, that will provide an additional level of public feedback and visibility to make sure that these efforts proceed with the kind of speed and commitment and success that is desperately needed in our communities. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Joe to continue the presentation. I will stay listening to your presentation, but I'm going to move into a noisier environment. So I'm going to have to mute myself, and I will trust the remainder of the capable presenting group to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Funk.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Joe Desbonic. I am a principal analyst for the county in the area of homelessness. And I'll stay on the slide right here, actually. I mean, the intent of the slide was to show really how we were going to weave governance into this methodology. There were some thoughts being put that we could add maybe a layer of bureaucracy to it through a joint powers agreement and so forth. But I felt like after I had spent some time working with the county that we already had the mechanism, to implement some of these ideas, which was, through the city manager's meeting. And what we decided, at least talked about, and for us to propose to the city councils and the board of supervisors, is that we spend an hour of each city manager meeting focused on homeless issues only, focusing on our strategy, and that allows the city managers to go back to the elected officials in their cities and get guidance and give them feedback, and I can take it over to the board of supervisors, and that way we're able to have sort of an agile and authorized level of planning going on each month. That wouldn't be the only meeting; those would spin off into sub meetings that the city managers would have and so forth. But that was really the idea: is we already have the communication pathways in place to discuss homelessness and make quick and agile decisions. So next slide, please. So this slide here looks pretty complicated, but I'll just walk you through it, okay? So it is a project management tool, of which there are many, and this is the one that I chose to use in this particular case. And this is what's called an operational approach. So we have a strategy, and we're looking at a way to implement that strategy, turn it into action. And what we have here are, on the left side, we call them lines of effort. And on the right side is the end state that we want to achieve in each of those lines of effort. And again, it says working draft across it because a lot of these are notional events going across. But a line of effort by definition is it's a series of related events that when combined over time help achieve a specific objective that supports achieving the strategy. Each of the lines of effort, they're somewhat overlapping, but they have to be independent enough to be a line of effort. And in fact, through the work of the steering committee that Susan talked about, we have 6 lines of effort now. So this is a little outdated, but I'll update it when we're going to be briefing the Board of Supervisors in August. So we'll spend most of July with getting all the input we get from your council today and from the public comments over the next 2 weeks. We have lots of websites out there and mechanisms to get input from the public, and then we're going to finalize this strategy in July and then present it in August. So again, though, back to the chart, what this allows you to do is say, so the main line of effort that we identified was we need to build housing. So again, the goal here of our objective is not to build housing. Our objective is to reduce homelessness. Building housing is one part of that, and it's what we decided is a main part of that, but it is not the only thing that we need to do to address homelessness. But let's take, for example, that line of effort, and we see those little green diamonds going across through time. Each one of those green diamonds represents an event that we determined is aligned with that line of effort. So for example, 1.1 might be 5 Cities Homeless Coalition's establishment of the pallet shelters, what they're calling the Cabins for Change project down there. 1.2 may be People Self-Help Housing's opening of Pismo Terrace in Pismo Beach for low-income and workforce housing. So each one of those lines of effort, and what we're going to get are the pipelines and the plans, and it's going to help us even pull Haslo and People Self-Help and other developers into the strategy, finding out what they have in their pipeline, what they're willing to share early enough once they're funded, and then that way we can see across the whole region who's doing what and where in terms of housing. And the city managers, we'll look at this every month and determine where we now have gaps and maybe where we may have overlap to make sure that all of those are addressed. And if, for example, line of effort 2, expanding services and navigation, there are certain projects that can be developed to again, as we establish our behavioral health and ramp up our efforts in that area, those projects would align there. So what this does is it allows us to see all of the different components we feel that make up homelessness and break it down into some of its basic elements, identify them as lines of effort, and then attack those particular attributes of homelessness as a team, because now we're looking at this regionally over time. And everyone can now see what everyone else is doing fairly clearly, so I know we can address that issue that, basically, we're all holding hands, that trust test we do, you fall backwards expecting somebody to catch you. In this case, all the cities are holding hands, and who's going to take the first step into homelessness, and everyone's afraid that the other cities aren't going to do it, right? Well, this, aligned with the city managers meeting in a compact, this particular operational approach, this methodology, allows us to see who's doing what and where, and it makes it pretty easy to see, who's not maybe, playing fair, and which cities and regions or districts are doing more than their share. It helps balance that out. And we do it regionally through cooperative planning on a monthly basis for sure, and it helps us see all that at one time. And you can expand this out through the years 2024, 2025. So ultimately, again, going back to the chart, you want, so line of effort, one, main effort, building housing. We want to get to an end state by the end of this 5-year plan where we have a mix of safe parking, emergency transition shelters, low income, permanent supportive housing, and special needs housing. They all exist in the right percentages, the right composition to reduce unsheltered living overall in our region. And again, that's where the whole data piece comes back into why we're tearing into our data processes, and so we can get a more finite look at homelessness as a phenomenon in our county, in our region, so we can build appropriately. Again, it doesn't make any sense if we keep building three-bedroom apartment, low-income housing for intended for homeless people if most of the homeless people are individuals, living in riverbeds. We don't. So we need to align our building with what we actually have a little better than we have been doing, and that will help. So that's where the data becomes important. So next slide, please. And for me, that wraps it up. I'm actually going to turn it over to our assistant CAO, who's here tonight, Rebecca Campbell, for some final comments.
I'll say good evening. Normally it's good morning at the Board of Supervisors meeting, but first time at the City Council meeting. So good evening, Mayor Stewart and members of the council. Thank you for having us. So I just wanted to come up and introduce myself, Rebecca Campbell. Wade Horton, our CAO, couldn't be here tonight, and so I wanted to say hello and also thank Joe for representing the county. My first day on the job was just about a year ago, and I stayed late that night because we had a meeting with Derek and all of the other city managers. We had CHP there, and we had Caltrans, and the subject was homelessness. And I was amazed at the collaboration then we were talking about and the efforts that were being done. Over the year, we have done quite a bit of action related to homelessness. We had the safe parking lot at Oklahoma Avenue. We partnered with Capslow. The board adopted its priorities in November, and homelessness is one of its top priorities. Also, the advantage of having the American Rescue Plan Act funds, a significant portion of those funds were dedicated towards homeless efforts. So we're continuing to work, and it's nice to see this effort being made, increasing this collaboration and efforts in this area. So I just wanted to introduce myself and say thank you. And with that, I think that's all of our speakers from the county, and I'll turn it back to the council. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Marks, do you have any questions initially?
Yeah, I did have a question about the possible role of SLOCOG in what we're talking about, or if SLOCOG is just being left out of the equation. They do have responsibility for housing through the RENA process, and they have a lot of experience in terms of allocating federal and state funding to the various jurisdictions. So perhaps Councilmember Pease can help answer that question. I'm just not sure if SLOCOG has anything at all to do with this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for the question, Councilmember Marks. This is Joe Desbonic again from the county. So SLOCOG is very aware of this strategy and this effort. When I actually attended my first city managers meeting, which was off-site up in Morro Bay, it was a beautiful event, by the way. But SLOCOG was there, and I briefed this topic. And right now, they feel that at least the members that were present that day feel that this is something they can get to at some point. But there is by no means any sort of overlooking of SLOCOG in this effort, as if we didn't talk to them or ask them. I think right now they're still focused on the transportation piece and maybe a few other issues, but this is just not something they feel they have the capacity for right now, as far as I understand from my conversations with them.
Thank you.
And thank you, Councilperson Marks. This is Rebecca Campbell. I'd like to add to that. So recently, well, in going back in time, when, I don't know if you know Carolyn Berg, but she was our homeless manager before Joe came on board. And so she had applied for a state grant that could do an assessment of the housing piece for low-income housing and different levels of housing. We lost her, and so there were many different efforts going on, but we did call for an extension on that grant. We did receive it, luckily, and so we were able to recently partner with SLOCOG, and they are going to be carrying out those efforts to do an assessment of the housing in the region. So I just wanted to add that, and we welcome working with them.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Pease.
Thank you for those responses. I think you're spot on, Councilmember Marks, that there is a relationship there, and in particular of housing and helping to coordinate the infrastructure for the RENA allocation. They have had a direct funding support for safe parking to be able to identify the nexus with transportation funds. There was some exploratory conversation when there was talk, do we need a new agency? And if we decided we needed an agency, would SLOCOG be able to take that on? And honestly, I think they felt like we, if funded appropriately and given that charge and all those things, that could be a fit. So I think that door is open if needed, but if we don't need a new agency and the coordination is able to happen with other existing structures, I don't think that they felt compelled to take that on. Want to add on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Pease. And just to put a little more color on this conversation, we've recently been talking, and Ms. Campbell's been in the room as well, about the role of SLOCOG, where they can play a key role, and one of that is about regional housing and infrastructure as it relates to RENA. And so I understand there was recently an item that went to the board, and so there's going to be some funding that's going to be transferred over to SLOCOG. And now Pete Rogers, the executive director, is now squarely involved in a lot of those conversations to try to link up the housing infrastructure piece. I think it's still on the table out there about, well, what is the best way to coordinate all of our efforts? Because I think the purpose of this is how do we align our efforts and resources to get at these outcomes that the county's identified. And I think the current thinking, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, is to line that up with a compact. So if you recall, for those that were around for the last plan, I think that plan was developed, in 2008 or so, was when it was adopted. All the cities signed on, and so I think we need to have some more conversation of what that looks like to sign on. It was the cities, the counties, and it was also NGOs, our nonprofit partners as well, that all came together and kind of supported a comprehensive strategy.
Thank you. Councilmember Pease.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this work. I am privileged to be able to serve currently on HSOC, having Council Member Christensen having done that for years and being great representation on that organization. So I've had some familiarity and really appreciate all the coordination of our nonprofits. I have just two questions right now. One is in the slides of the year 2 to 3, build and staff a regional homeless operations center. I'm wondering if somebody could maybe talk a little bit more, just wanting to, make sure we're not, seems like there's, just wanting to see how the resources that are needed to make that happen.
Sure, yeah. So the original thinking on that was something that I'd read in other locations, other counties and states around the country when I was reading about this stuff. And really what we're looking at is having sort of at the time, my idea was to use what is currently over at 885 Oklahoma Avenue, which will be evacuated as the animal headquarters, animal shelter headquarters, as they move to the new one. And because that building is located next to the safe parking, and when I was working out there, I got the idea that, and that when I looked at the long-term plans for that building, it was to be demolished. So I saw that as an opportunity to use it for something. Initially, my thought was that we could use it for kind of what I would call like an overflow navigation capability, where I was going to bring in different agencies, perhaps like DMV. There were some law firms volunteering free service. Basically, you would go out and and homeless people would need some help getting some navigation. Where do I start with homelessness? Where do I begin? I know there's cards, there's lots of phone numbers, lots of agencies, and it takes a long time to coordinate that. Well, I was trying to bring it to one place at one time, based on some things that I've read. Since that time, through the steering committee and having those conversations with our NGOs and partners in the community, a lot of them felt that was kind of a potentially duplicating effort that they have. And, so I looked at that and said, yeah, maybe we need to, I still need the building, I'm not quite sure for what. And now, so that particular goal probably will change a little. And I have a different plan for that building now as we move forward into some of these projects. We're looking at establishing a tiny home village around that building next to safe parking, and then using that building as a support center, case management, and all those sorts of things for the folks that live in both the safe parking and a tiny home village, in a building that has Wi-Fi and office facilities for privacy and counseling, which we don't currently have right now. As you know, Capsule is using a trailer out there, but I want to try to bring all that together in that building. So I just gave you a little background on what my initial intent was, which is still kind of captured in here, and how that's maybe evolved into a different project.
Great answer. And then my second question is, as we look at this, the plan, I love the kind of the right now and the middle and the long term. I think that's a terrific, and there is that urgency. So when we are looking at more shelter, especially non-congregate shelter, so the tiny homes, the pallet structures, and safe parking, those types of things. There seems to be a pretty consistent reluctance against a tent. So kind of the same format as a parking space for a car or a space for a pallet structure. That wouldn't it be even quicker as another kind of one of those interim steps while we're getting pallet shelters and tiny homes to have a spot for a tent? Recognizing that, the reality is that I see the 40 Prado wish list, and it includes tents. We know that people need tents right now, and that would have that purpose, but it's not like an encampment willy-nilly. It's the same program as a pallet structure or a vehicle, but it would be a tent. Can you help me understand why, or maybe there isn't, maybe that is still on the table, or if it's not on the table, why not?
Well, I would say anything's on the table at this point, willing to explore all ideas, of course. I think when we use the term sanctioned encampment, a lot of people get the vision, and I think it's perhaps justified in some areas of the country. Again, when I read about some of the histories of sanctioned encampments and what happened to them.
Sorry, I didn't use that word though, right?
Oh, no, you didn't.
Safe,
no, but
safe tenting, some other
thing
that's
just,
totally different.
Correct.
Just making sure we're not.
Yeah, so tent city, and some people use it as sanctioned encampment and so forth. So if you didn't use that term, if what you're saying is we could just simply put up tents rather than tiny homes, where we have the same level of service, because that's where the sanctioned encampment piece does cause some issues, is that basically we put up tents and just to get them out of, get homeless folks out of the way without any services, and then things will spin, rapidly out of control in that area. And if you make them too large, too many people consolidate in one spot, that also becomes problematic. whereas a tiny home village, I would say that nothing's off the table at that point. I mean, again, the use of paddle shelters or tiny homes themselves do introduce a level of dignity and security that we feel there are a lot of people that living in riverbeds and so forth that just simply don't want to go to congregate shelter for those reasons. They feel a lack of security, maybe even a lack of privacy or dignity. Putting up tents may not lure them out of the riverbed, so to speak, either, versus tiny homes, even though it is obviously a much cheaper solution, to your point. So overall, I say nothing's off the table at this point. This is still a very fluid plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schwarzman.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for all of the work that you have done on this plan. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you to HSOC. Thank you to the board. Thank you to all the staff that worked on this. I think it's been a long time coming, and you have done a fabulous job of really making things tangible and goal-oriented and specific with objectives. I noticed one of the lines of effort, as you called them, was around expansion of services and navigation. And I also noticed on one of the slides, and I know from my real life, putting on my other hat as a county employee, about the difficulties in hiring staff. I've heard it from Jack. I've heard it from our behavioral health director about, everybody's burnt out right now. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of vacancies. Has there been any discussion about, in all the work that you've done, about how to tackle that? Because if we don't have the staff to provide the services, is that going to put us behind on meeting some of our goals and actually putting a dent in some of these issues?
Sure, we've discussed that, actually. I don't know if Ann Robin would like to come up and speak on that. She'd probably give a little more detailed perspective, particularly the behavioral health staffing issues.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening.
I made it worth you being here tonight.
We didn't plan this, trust me. Good evening, Ann Robin, Behavioral Health Director for the county. Thank you, Mayor Stewart and the council members. So yes, staffing is a huge area of concern statewide for behavioral health professionals at all levels. We are just now being able to bring on a new cadre of certified peer support folks. There's training, there's certification. It will be a Medi-Cal reimbursable service. So working with TEMA and Family Care Network and our other contract agencies in the county, we hope we'll be able to expand that level of service, which really we haven't had a ton of. I know TEMA and their outreach workers and CAPSO have both had people with lived experience working through their organizations to do outreach and engagement. Sometimes that's the best level of care and the best way to really reach people who are out there in need of help. As far as clinicians, I was just telling Rebecca that I received another resignation yesterday for a clinician who's going into private practice. So, the benefit of COVID was we learned how to do a lot more teletherapy. The bad thing is now people figured out they can do it in a private practice and stay home. I can't get into labor negotiations and payment for professions that have been very underpaid and underrecognized as necessary by the physical health care world for many years. As most of you know, both addictions and mental health have been stigmatized, and the need for those services have not been recognized until, I would say, in my 40-year career, maybe the last 5 years. So we have a lot of work to do to improve the system, to continue to reduce the stigma, to understand that an individual yelling out in the parking lot isn't doing it because it's a behavior or they want to be disruptive. They're doing it because of something that might be very much upsetting them and they need help for it. And luckily, Jack was faster on his feet. And Flow PD was out there. But these are some of the issues that we have to work together. I did a training for the crisis intervention team, training up in Paso. Yesterday was part of it, and just acknowledging that none of us have the cure. None of us can cure cancer. We can't stop crime 100%. We're not going to cure homelessness. We just have to work together to really put the resources we have in a coordinated way. Regardless if I have clinicians, maybe we have more case managers. Maybe we have more people with lived experience. So that's the shift that we have the opportunity to take right now in looking at, do you need a clinician for everything? Or do you need somebody with lived experience? Or do you need a really good case manager? And how do we build out a system not depending always on having the clinical service? And that's really all I got for you. But thank you for the question, Michelle. Sorry, Councilwoman Shorsman. Sorry, this is a small town.
Supervisor Ortiz-Leg again. I just wanted to add that this week, we are hosting the CSAC. We have about 20 supervisors coming here this week just on the issue of human resources. So again, this is an issue that's going across the state, perhaps the country, I don't know, but for sure in our state. And with CSAC, we have a number of experts, and our own HR director will be participating in it. And a lot of it is focused on behavioral health, but again, really trying to work with our partners throughout the state on how we're going to recruit and get these jobs to be an attractive way for people to think about for career paths. So it's working on it this week.
Thank you. I've always thought there should be a public service loan forgiveness for social workers and getting them into the profession versus, not versus, but in addition to the teacher program. Yeah.
There is. And we want to encourage people to take a look at those. So
Great to know. We should tell that to more and more people.
that's why I took advantage of your open city council meeting to say, yes, that the Health Resources Service Agency, the federal government, has loan reimbursement for all behavioral health levels. And then there are some state initiatives as well. And then there's actually going to be quite a bit more funding for either loan reimbursement, or we're hoping for stipends to actually pay tuition ahead of time rather than having the reimbursement. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Perfect. That's the key right there. Councilmember Shorsman, did you have more? Okay. Councilmember Marks, did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any, I guess the one question that I have is if there's any kind of outreach that's going on in terms of family reunification, if some of these unhoused people have just kind of gotten lost, and there might be family members out there who do want to connect with them and bring them back into the fold, so to speak. Is that, I may have missed that somewhere, but from the time that I was able to volunteer at 40 Prado, that was something that was happening, not real frequently, but it was wonderful when we were able to help people reconnect with their families. So my question is whether that's an aspect of what's being planned. Thank you.
It is. We'll hear more.
So thank you, Councilmember Marks. Yeah, I believe that, family reunification sort of, it happens naturally through outreach, I would say. Is there?
We're making sure your mic is on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can speak to that. I got Chief Scott back here, and so we run that program through our CAT program, but would love to hear your thoughts before we maybe talk about some specifics.
Yeah, I could say that I know working at the safe parking site, I worked there for a few months personally every day, and there was, and those things just sort of happened naturally as you broke down the communication barrier with some of the folks, as they sort of came out of their shell, so to speak, and they trusted you to talk about their lives. There were several incidences just in that small segment of the population that said, hey, I actually lived in Maryland for a long time, and I just wound up over here through a series of events. And I'd really like to call my family. And in this particular case, I was another actually homeless gentleman there at the safe parking site who they called their family, and then that family sent a plane ticket over here, and they flew home within a week. And those types of efforts have occurred. I would say it's almost naturally a part of breaking down the barriers to getting to know homeless individuals, to where they'll share that information with you and then try to make that connection with them if they permit you to. But I will turn it over to.
Make a quick comment.
Yeah, sure.
So I just wanted to, this is Jack Leahy from CAPSLO, Director of Homeless Services, and I just wanted to take a moment to echo Joe's comment. I know that as a matter of practice, the family reunification discussion happens at the first level of service engagement we have. So when somebody even comes in the door, to 40 Prado or meets with our outreach team, that's usually the first thing that we're trying to problem solve for. And to Joe's comment, it's usually the easiest way to get somebody back to stability. And it's the most cost-effective way as well. So that's always been our first course of action when we work with somebody. And to Joe's point about somebody having walls up, that's usually the easiest way to get the walls down, because we know of the city program, we know of other private funded programs to help with that reunification process. And I just want to applaud county and the city for really bolstering that programming type, because it's a really, really key part of the system that's hard to see sometimes. And it's really integral to our engagement strategy too, because we want to give somebody as many options as possible and support them in the choice that they make for stability. So I just wanted to say, Joe's comment was really accurate to how services are provided currently and hopefully moving forward.
And this is, Councilmember Funk would mention that in the plan that you see online, this service is referred to as diversion. And is one, along with prevention, is an early priority for doing additional training and support so that we can take full advantage of that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two quick comments, since I know we've spent a considerable amount of time on this. In the countywide strategic plan draft, you'll find that line of effort 2 focuses specifically on services, and outreach is mentioned multiple times under that line of effort. So, Councilmember Marks, I would recommend taking a careful look at that if you feel that you would like to make a recommendation for more focus on family reunification. In terms of the program that the city has, that's administered through our Community Action Team, or CAT, which we've talked about before in these meetings. It's one of their most successful components of that program. We have paid for transportation to allow people to reunify with their families, so that continues at the city level.
I believe even last week, Chief Agson's gone right now, but we mentioned about the mobile crisis unit. There was someone just last week that we were able to reunify someone down from Southern California, so that was exciting. Chief Scott, did you want to add to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. It's tough following these experts, but just to touch on that point and to celebrate Fire's achievement, the mobile crisis unit did have a reunification, I think, within the first week of operation. It's the pinnacle of what our field services do, and I remember when John Clevens would come in with a reunification, it was high fives and congratulations, because sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes months and even a year to make that connection. But to restore them back with our families is always the mission of our field workers, if we can't get them into crisis care immediately. But thank you for allowing me to speak on that.
And Madam Mayor and Council, I just want to add that for the city's program and the CAT team, that has been a component of the city's CAT team since I remember it being created back when I was Assistant City Attorney, Jim Fellows and Kathy Bianchi. That is a primary focus, and as they said, one of the first lines of inquiry when you're engaging with someone.
Thank you so much. All right, I have a couple of questions as well. I was looking at page 10 of 12 on your slides, and I see kind of the org chart, for lack of a better word. I don't see exactly where volunteers or community fits in, and I know there was mentioned outreach. I looked at page 33 of the other plan that I haven't got to fully read yet, that is on your HSOC website. It seems like it's kind of hinted at there, but would love more in that.
Yeah, could you also go back a few slides, Kelsey, maybe to slide 10, just so everybody can look at it? So yeah, the intent of the slide really was, it was just to draw a bare bones structural look at homelessness communication through the county right now, from the cities and the organizations that all discuss homelessness, all of the pathways for communication by either elected leaders or appointed officials. It wasn't meant to be all-encompassing of and leave out the nonprofits and the volunteers and all the other organizations. Actually, the genesis of this diagram came up during the first city manager meeting where I was briefing the plan, and one of the city managers asked, well, how will this fit into what we have already on homelessness? So, how is it gonna work? And I walked over to the dryer, it's actually in this room right next to us here in the council, what's that called? The council hearing room. And I just walked over to the dry erase board and drew this. And one of them said, oh, that makes perfect sense. So I just took a picture of it and then drew it and put it in the diagram. So by no means was it meant to be excluding anybody else. This was just simply how will the cities and the county work together through official elected, channels with the city managers, through pathways that already exist. So it was just to show that we did not need to layer any more bureaucracy into the process, that we already had them in place. So your point is well taken, but that's, I probably should annotate that somehow. And this slide has caused a lot of problems sometimes.
No worries, thank you. Just, as you're the action committee, and I feel like a lot of the action is done by volunteer members and nonprofits, that it's important to incorporate in some way, shape, or form. And then on the slide right before that, on slide 9, or page 9 of 12, Councilmember Funk shared how this first 12 months is we're not waiting for all of this to happen first. And I wasn't sure that this 4 or 5 items really shares sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. What additional action will be happening in addition to what the cities are doing now and the nonprofits are doing now? So I didn't really see any additional action, so it was more of just identifying what's happening now, kind of like the slide 10, or is this something I'm missing?
No? Okay, I'll take it then. Basically what we're drawing here is a plan for action starting now. And we're trying to look out, 4 or 5 years as much as possible with as much fidelity as we can, so we don't find ourselves, in a position, as they say in the military, of critical success, meaning everything went so well, like what do we do now? And that's obviously not gonna happen, right? So, what we are trying to do is make sure that we're keeping ourselves busy with achievable milestones over the next 5 years. And it's by no means going to be inclusive of all the things that are probably going to be generated, all the actions that are going to be generated from this action. The key point was to just start generating a regional approach, generating action along that avenue. And I'm not able to predict what good things, may and hopefully come out of that initial action. Is that what you meant, or am I misunderstanding?
No, I think I got it. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, that's my immediate questions right now. Any other questions from the council members? All right, we're going to take a quick break before we go into public comment, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. All right, well, thank you so much for taking a quick little break here. So many good and exciting things to talk about. Well, now it's that time. If you haven't put in a card yet, you can put in a public comment on this item, and we'll go ahead and move forward. I believe, City Clerk, we already have 2 people. If I can find them. All right, first, oh boy. Zoli Harway?
That's me?
Oh, yay.
I don't know where to go, we're gonna move the podium or whatever, but.
You could stay right there.
Yep, there's
fine, too.
Oh, right here? Okay. Andy's handing me a microphone, which is really
Perfect.
dangerous, so I'll warn you. Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Zoli Harway. I am representing the San Luis Obispo Elks Lodge, 322 here in San Luis Obispo. I guess the word right now for me is wow. This was an incredible presentation, and it is very encouraging that the city and the county and everybody here that is addressing this problem, which not only, affects us, it's the county, the state, the nation. I originally intended to come here and, explain our situation, and give you a little bit of, a few examples of what's going on in our little neck of the woods over here. And it really all comes from some events that occurred within the last week, namely 2 fires on our property, one that was intentionally set and one we're just going to assume that was unintentionally set. But with the temperatures, the dryness, and loss of property and possibly life we felt it was necessary to bring this to the city council and just, tell you our concerns. I mean, literally, it spooked a lot of people. And so, what I've brought today, or the pictures I brought, was just to give you an illustration of the sophistication, I guess, of these encampments, because these aren't the people that are sleeping in downtown. These are not people that are, looking for a way out. They are generally squatting, and they are on our property. And we are asking for understanding and assistance on trying to remove these people from our property. And, if you can just see what we're doing right here, we have, the first one is a tent with, water. The guy has a generator. If you go to the next slide, they have a barbecue, which, outdoors, but not in our backyard, please. The next slide is, our property is right adjacent to the Highway 101. And so the last fire not only burned, some of the vegetation and stuff, but it also burned down a billboard, which I don't even know where we're going to go with that. It's been a long-term contract dispute that we now have to deal with, which, but scroll up a little more. But you can see that we have 3-wire barbed wire, but that is not a deterrent, obviously. And if you keep going up, you'll see, we've got a lounge area, we've got, keep going, other tents there. And if you keep going up, they have their own lounge. They have their own Elks Lodge behind the Elks Lodge. So anyway, I guess, what we're asking for is just assistance. But during that break, this gave us the opportunity to talk to Kelsey, the chief of police, and I believe that, I can go back to the board and the council and say, you know what, we have resources. We just have to use them. So thank you for all of your hard work, all of your good work. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for just a few moments and let you know, that we want to work with you, and we'll, be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, next we have Bettina Swigger. And after that, we'll have Jack Leahy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Bettina Swigger, CEO of Downtown SLO, the nonprofit organization that partners with the city to foster an economically vibrant downtown. Our organization represents more than 500 businesses, and we're best known for our popular events like Concerts in the Plaza, which starts this Friday, just to name a few. I also serve on the HSOC, and along with the presenters that you heard tonight, and I'm also on the board of directors for the California Downtown Association. Outside of encampments, the challenges of homelessness are most visible in downtown environments, and the largest downtown in the county is San Luis Obispo. You hear about it from your constituents, and we hear about it from our businesses every single day. People are struggling, and their struggles negatively impact our businesses, and they create a narrative and perception about safety in our downtown. From my work on the HSOC, I know that a lot of attention has been given in this plan to providing direct services and creating shelter and housing for people who need them. And these are great, necessary programs. However, many of the people who need these programs that are trying to serve them are resistant to institutions and bureaucratic systems. So tonight, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions to the county about how this plan will specifically deploy resources to connect the people who need these services to the programs. Last week, I was at an industry conference with other downtown leaders from around the country, and we all talked about how much time, energy, and resources the challenge of homelessness requires across organizations, county, city, neighborhoods, nonprofits, health institutions. And I'm wondering if you know that the number of touches that is required to get a person to say yes to changing their circumstances can be as high as 50. So the only practical path forward is sustained and trained outreach. And the draft plan of the line of effort A2 focuses on expanded service provider provision through outreach. And programs like the MCU and the CAT that the city work on are critical to that success. The city has stepped up and we're grateful, and it's time for the county to step up as well. Downtown SLO runs a modest, clean, and safe program which consists of uniformed ambassadors who clean and maintain the sidewalks. They interact with and welcome the public, including daily touches with the unhoused people who live downtown. In the past year, our ambassadors had 672 interactions with unhoused individuals. They performed 29 wellness checks and they de-escalated 20 situations, just to name a few data points. Based on our small program and what we know about the impact of clean and safe programs in other cities, it makes sense for the county's plan to support the expansion of our program with more ambassadors and more dedicated outreach hours. Additional resources would be so helpful, and we very much hope to be included in the collaborative efforts for this outreach and hope there is an opportunity to expand proven current outreach programs and use our network of similar providers to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Jack Leahy and then Biz Steinberg.
Whoops. Hi, Mayor Stewart, City Council, Jack Leahy from CAPSLO, Director of Homeless Services. I first wanted to thank the county and the work group that was convened to put this together, the strategy to address homelessness. Specifically, I wanted to echo Bettina's encouragement of an expanded outreach capacity around the county. I believe that will actually help strengthen our ability to route people towards the permanent housing programs that they need, but also help people stay in housing. So one of the big things that we might see when you route a lot of people into permanent housing is that people might, what some service providers call, rebound out of housing. And it's really key to have a safety net that's really integrated within outreach and all the way to the other end of permanent housing. So that means if an outreach worker encounters somebody, they would know, hey, you're housed over here, what's going on, and then they can link them with their caseworkers in housing, or they can link them through these other mechanisms. And really that only happens through a coordinated effort that's included in kind of lines of efforts 2 and 3, where there is a robust data system that is supporting a coordinated entry system that works with people from first point of contact to exit out of the system. I'm really hopeful that this plan comes together in that sense, and that the cities can support the effort to unify a lot of these processes that have been a little bifurcated. The expansion of coordinated entry, which I alluded to in that example of, you know, if I run into this person, I kind of know where they are within the system. A critical component of that is having a unified data system and a really clear understanding of what we should expect when somebody's coming through the system. So what does their situation allow us to understand of what housing they qualify for and what housing they want. So I think, you know, as we're looking at this and looking at it critically, really making sure that we're understanding that these systems that we put in place will have ripples onto other systems. So it's kind of, I've joked, it's kind of like the where do you start problem, and I think this is a really good starting spot, and I think what we can do is really dig in and make sure that that unifies with our local efforts and with the nonprofits efforts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Biz Steinberg.
With hearing aids, I always get that stuck. Good evening, Mayor Stewart and members of the council and the city staff. I'm Biz Steinberg, also from CAPSLO. I really want to thank the county tonight and the city. First for the city and the county being able to be here with their leader, one of the members of the Board of Supervisors. I think that says a lot to all of you. And for the competent county staff who have really jumped in to tackle this challenge. It's a heck of a lot more complex than it was in '89 when the city, county, EOC at the time tried to tackle it. So we've come a distance, but what I liked when I saw the plan is that all 7 cities, I gather the county is going around to each of the cities, and that this compact is going to unite our region. We had a little conversation during the break about, Santa Maria area, because that, down the road, they might also be able to be part of this. I mean, we have anyway, there's interaction. What I also appreciate, I serve on the Housing Authority Commission as my own personal volunteer thing that I do. And I have learned so much about what it takes to pull in a housing project with the funding to actually happen. It's so complicated, but with what I saw up here, because we need the housing, we need single room occupancy, and I know we're looking at the old Maxine Lewis, at least in our city, for that kind of a potential. But we need diverse kinds of housing. And in this compact, I'm hoping Joe will be able to get each city to have the list that, like I see in my development report every month at Haslow, that we would then all together see what's Paso planning, what's Grover Beach, what about the corner of that Ash Street in Arroyo, so that we know what's happening and that it's not just a guess, and that the mayor's meeting, which I've been to a few times, I think that's going to help reinforce all of this. So I just thank you all for being part of it. And we're here at Capslow as a provider, but we are willing to help and share and be part of whatever you might need us to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. City Clerk, are there any other?
No, they're not.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, Bettina, what you were saying. And one of the things that about the touches is I know that, hopefully we're not actually touching, but, sorry, my HR hat, I can't take it off. But I know that when the community action team came along, the reduction in contacts with individuals and being able to get people to utilize help quickly has been really good. In addition, I also appreciate the fact that institutional help is not always appreciated and congregate living is not always appreciated. So I appreciate with the plan that we're looking at that as well. City Manager, did you have any comments you wanted to comment?
No, Madam Mayor, I did, I think Community Development staff has the focus questions. We've put some questions together to perhaps guide the conversation. The intent of tonight is we're going to be taking notes, and then we're going to take the notes and the feedback. We'll probably then put that in the form of a letter or a memo on behalf of the city. We're fortunate to have Kelsey Knockett that serves on the steering committee. We want to make sure that the rest of the HSOC and the steering committee has, the benefit of hearing from the council.
Thank you. And I have one more question. The city app that's being created, is it still county-wide or will that be city-wide?
The app that we're developing is specific to the city because it helps to streamline our outreach efforts with departments that have a direct interaction with the unhoused community members. So that includes our CAT and MCU, our Parks Rangers staff, some members of Public Works. And those are for individuals that are unhoused, unsheltered. So generally in our creek beds and our parks.
So can I ask for Joe, sorry, for the county, do you foresee watching the city app as a pilot and then the county growing into the same space, or do you see something different?
So two things, one, the county did actually develop their own app just before COVID began. It's called the TEMP program. It's a transient encampment mapping program. It is essentially an app that the sheriff's department had started to work with the county IT department to start exactly the same thing. It dampened down during COVID, other priorities rose above it. I just reignited that effort about 6 weeks ago with the county IT. Pardon me, I'm gonna cough real quick. Excuse me. So that is, and we just trained up about 30 sheriff's deputies on that app, so it's rolling out. Another part of this is that we talk about data and our homeless management information system. The platform that we use in the county right now is, for lack of a better term, fairly antiquated. It's for probably a county of a much smaller population of homeless individuals that we have here. So part of what I'm doing is we're going to raise that up to the right level of software platform to be able to not only analyze the data and present it in the ways that we need for the level of homelessness that we're at here, but also it is linked to GIS capability. If you get the right vendor, it is naturally linked into a GIS capability of encampment mapping and so forth. So I've been looking at this issue for a while. I know that, excuse me again, that I was talking with 5 Cities Homeless Coalition, and there's another app that Santa Barbara County uses that's pretty much spread across their departments as well. And I'm looking at that as maybe something we can pull in, and we can actually start doing something like you just mentioned with Santa Maria. So we now have an app that we can work with the city of Santa Maria on that app. So I'm exploring options. Things are being done. It's just another one of the parts of the sub effort in those lines of effort. But the sheriff's department, though, for the county, does actually have a mapping tool that they're being trained up on regularly now. It got reinvigorated about 2 months ago.
Great, thank you so much. Vice Mayor Christensen?
Yes, thank you. I am heartened by the county's efforts in this and their renewed interest in this. It's been a while, and I appreciate the effort so far in making some good hires and getting some energy behind this. It really is, it feels good after, really, I have to be honest, a long time of feeling like we're kind of screaming in the wilderness. But I think the regional approach is very much appreciated, and I think it's going to be one of the key factors in actually making a difference. Hearing about county sheriffs being trained specially and things like that, that's just really great. And I think also the focus on data and having a real clear understanding of what you're actually dealing with is absolutely important. I have to say, working at TEMA and just being somebody who's been involved in some of this stuff, some aspects of it for a very long time, you could ask me, I'll tell you. There's some of this stuff is not, it's not rocket science. I think it's important to have actual data. Don't get me wrong. Don't take my word for it. Anecdote is not data, but there are some things that are very true, and some of them have been mentioned by our public comments and by our speakers and presenters tonight. So, data is going to be really important, but we kind of know some things also, and then, so keep that in mind. And that's what gives me hope also, is that the steering committee, there's a lot of depth of experience and knowledge in it, and I think that will be very good because it will bring some reality to some of these discussions. And Council Member Pease mentioned that I was on the HSOC, and it was only actually for a fairly short time. But one of the things that strikes me is, the HSOC deals a lot with funding and with federal requirements and grants and that kind of stuff, and that doesn't give them any time really at all to discuss policy and new approaches and give this kind of real down-to-earth input, which a lot of the folks there have, and a lot of the folks don't give it because they're worried about their funding. They don't really want to say what's really going on because they're worried about their funding. So you need to have people who are not worried about their funding to be speaking, or you need to have very brave people who will speak anyway, even though they're scared about their funding. So I just wanted to point that out, that you've got to have a way to share information and talk about the realities of dealing with this population in a way that doesn't threaten their funding, because otherwise they won't say what's really going on. So that's one thing. I think the plans are really good. So insofar as what we've seen, they are a very big picture still, and we really are going to, it's the devil's always in the details, as you know, and I'll be, I don't want to be cynical, but, and I'm not going to be cynical, but I am going to be, I'm going to be watching to see if this commitment continues. I know it will for the individuals in the room, but there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of players in this big problem, and let's see if they stick to their guns and keep wanting to really make a difference here. So I appreciated the comments that Bettina made about the downtown slow, and I can give you a piece of data right here. The biggest impact is on the city of San Luis Obispo. Always has been, always will be. That's the way it goes. So there's no wondering about that. And my concern is with the funding resources, because a lot of the stuff that's on this plan costs money, and I'm not sure, I know we're feeling good right now, but who knows? I'm not sure where the money's coming from, and that would be a good thing to hear more about in terms of the plan as it goes forward, is exactly how is it going to be funded? Is it going to come from actual grant sources that are known? Is it going to come from people's general plans? I mean, we all have worked on regional stuff with the cities in various areas, from animal shelters to the IWMA. And sometimes we don't see the same level of commitment and funding from everyone. And so that's going to be really, really, really key. I look over there at Ms. Rebecca. Really important. I was concerned about that slide that stated that the ranking of SLO as the nation's 6th most expensive county. I've heard that a million times. And of course, our housing is expensive. But of course, all of us know that we are nowhere near the top most expensive place in terms of housing for the country. I mean, there's tons of places. Half the East Coast and most of the West Coast is more expensive in terms of their housing costs than a lot of places in the country. The way that gets ranked is housing versus wages. And so it's the wage part that we never really talk about as far as dealing with how expensive housing is. And the wage part, I'm not talking about trying to give all the homeless folks jobs that pay living wages. I'm talking about paying the people who deal with the homeless living wages, because I know working for TEMA, they don't make much. And they start out there. Most of those folks are people who have lived experience. Almost all of them are trainees. They don't have their full licenses. The minute they get their license, they go get hired by the county. And then the minute they get hired by the county, they work for the county a little while, and then they go off on their own. So it's a great little, I mean, it gets people out there. That's good. But it doesn't really deal with the people who are needing this kind of attention, the folks who are just needing that constant contact. And so there has to be some part of this plan, unfortunately, that doesn't just deal with housing and homeless. It has to deal with wages and staffing, which again was mentioned by several people. And I want to really, I'm going to stay really focused on that part, because without that, I've worked on housing all these years, and we're building units we're building thousands of units, including hundreds and hundreds of low-income units here. But if you don't have the staffing to oversee these kinds of units, they don't do well. I think the guy from, I always forget your name, Jack. He talks about people who go into housing and then they go out of housing. I see this myself working at TEMA. They go into housing, they go out of housing. That's case management, and it's a challenge, and some folks that will just happen, but lots of times it's because the people who are supporting them aren't making any money, and they change jobs too. They change jobs every 6 months. They get a better job, because they're experienced, because they're dealing with these people every day, all the time, and they have a lot of great experience, and they're really good and they really care. But you can't make a program out of people who are not there all the time. I mean, they are moving on. And the folks who are homeless the most, and the chronically homeless the most, who need the most case management, they need a constant, steady presence. They can't have people who are 3 months they're your case manager, and then you never see them again. And then you get another person for 2 months, and then you get another person for 6 months. And that's just not going to work either. So I really want to go into that. That staffing part is going to be really key, and it's going to take training and outreach and money to pay those folks, enough money to have a home of their own to live in here, whether it's a rental or a purchase, but also to, keep them in the job for long enough to make a difference. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about, and some people have touched on it also, and I don't know, I've been thinking about this for 4 years at TEMA, and I've talked about it a million times from the dais up here, and I believe Ms. Funk and Ms. Ortiz-Leg have heard me do a little diatribe or two, and that is the problem with the folks who don't want housing and they don't want services, and they have to be talked into it, and then they do it for a month, and then they go away, and it's raining, and now they go back in, and then it's not raining, and so they go back out, and they don't want services really. Some of them will take services eventually after 12 or 15 or 17 contracts or 50, and some of them are really, I talked to them. I don't want services. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with I don't want any responsibility for any of the stuff that you have to do to live in a home. And that's the way they are. So those are the people, unfortunately, who we see here there everywhere, who we get the most political pushback about, who we get the most complaints about from neighbors and friends, and who we really are, the most helpless with, and who our police and our fire department deals with all the time. So aside from all the fantastic work that I know is already going on and has been going on and will go on because of this plan, there has to be some way of recognizing that really difficult nut that we haven't been able to crack. And if there's a solution to it, I have never heard of it. I don't think anybody else has. Otherwise, we'd have used it. So we have to figure out a way to deal with that, though, in a public way. We've got to talk about it, and we've got to get the public to understand that, we have unfortunate individuals, for one reason or the other, who are going to end up being on the streets. And how we're going to deal with that, we can do as much as we can to get as many as we can back to their families, into housing, into tiny homes, into parking things, into wherever. But we have a nice climate, and there are always going to be more, and we need to figure out what to say about those folks too, and what to do, if anything, about them. I don't know what it is. I haven't heard anybody ever say anything, but that needs to be part of your plan too. That's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Marks, did you have any comments or remaining questions?
Yeah, I just have really one question, and I don't expect it to be answered tonight, but I would like to have more specifics about how the county and the compact imagine they're going to reduce homelessness by 50% in 5 years. Like, what specifically are they going to do? Are we going to do? And is the number that is going to be cut in half, where are we going to get that number? Because the goalpost is always moving, and the numbers are going up of unhoused people. So I think it's a worthy goal. It just strikes me as something that may not be entirely achievable, in that it's a bit vague. So I'm really interested in programs that get things done, increasing outreach, which has been said before. And also I agree with Council Member Christensen that there are some antisocial and some criminal elements in this population. The fellow from the Elks Lodge pointed out that there's a certain amount of sophistication in some of these encampments. I think that we need to recognize that there are different categories of people who end up being unhoused, and the actually being pretty straightforward and objective about some of these encampments is a really good idea. It's something that we need to do. We can't be naive. We cannot be sentimental. We cannot be naive. There are people who are trying to take over the creeks and use them as a base for various kinds of criminal activities. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the work that's being done, and I really think a coordinated regional effort is worth a good try. So thanks, everybody at the county, and that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Marks.
There you go. Joe Desvonick, Principal Analyst for Homelessness from the county. Councilmember Marks, so the number itself isn't vague, and it's very specific from where it came from. So what we're looking at was a number of 2,050 individuals that were looking to get into some type of housing. That number came, excuse me again, that number came from the 2019 point in time count, stated that there were roughly 1,483 homeless individuals, of which 80% were unsheltered, or about 1172 unsheltered. Out of that 1483 in 2018, we also assume that there is an influx of 200 homeless people into homelessness greater than leave homelessness. So we add 200 per year. So if you basically take 1,500 and add that 600 to that for this particular year, you're looking at 2,100. And then you divide that by 2, that's 1,050, 1,050 individuals. Over a 5-year time period, that's another 1,000 people that become homeless because of our 200 per year assumption that we're making. So you add 1,050 plus 1,000 over the 5 years, we come up with 50% of 2050. If you look in, so what you're maybe not, well, you are privy to it, everyone is, if you step outside of this presentation and look at the actual draft plan that is on the county, if you go to our Department of Social Services website, and then you look at the HSOC link under that, and then you go, there is a link there to the draft plan, which, by the way, we're trying to get as much public input as we can on a survey link within the draft for ideas from the public, and we're taking this to many different venues to push it out. But if you look in the draft plan from the Department of Social Services website and open up and look at Annex A, it gives a very graphic depiction of those numbers of how we plan on addressing homelessness quantitatively from that 2050. So it shows you how we derived at that number of 2,050 individuals, and we also break that 2,050 number down into the methods that we think we can achieve that reduction in homelessness. And that's what I would recommend for anybody that has that same question, is to get on that link, read through the plan, and look at Annex A.
Thank you. I hope we get a lot of feedback on that Survey Monkey. Council Member Pease.
Thank you so much. I'm super happy to support the compact or arrangement and what the county is doing. I think staff had some questions. Did you want to bring those forward? I assume they're the same ones that are in the staff report. Is that right?
That's correct. They're on page 392 of the packet.
I think there was a bit of a mic duel. I have one more slide that I would like to show council before we enter that discussion. And that's regarding next steps, just so we have a sense of timeline and where we're headed. So for the countywide strategic plan, they will be presenting to HSOC on July 18th. And then the expectation is that they will be presenting to the Board of Supervisors for final approval in August. As far as our city level strategic plan is concerned, we want to have the opportunity to follow the county's lead. And so you will not see a city level strategic plan written from us until the new year in January. We plan to bring that to you all at January 17th City Council meeting. But prior to that, you will be getting a more in-depth update from myself in a study session that's scheduled for the September 6th council meeting.
Great, thank you. So, and I just want to make sure, so I see questions on 338 of the agenda packet.
That's correct.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
338, yeah.
Okay.
They begin on 337 and they lap over to page 338.
Okay, and so for those who don't have this right in front of them, the first question, is there any specific feedback for the county? And I think we'll all be able to share ours. The next 3 questions seem like just great questions for staff to continue. How are we meeting these challenges for mental health and drug and alcohol and related services? How is this going to be done equitably? And I think that's hugely important to all of us and also to the county and to the other cities. So with that, I think it's a really interesting model to have the city managers be kind of a central place for that. So I'm intrigued by that as a potential structure with staff. It seems like you'll probably be bringing others on board, but that way everybody's involved on day one. And then the question of funding, how are we going to do the funding? So I think those are great questions, and I assume they'll go forward and we'll kind of push to make sure there is adequate funding. There was a last question about the action committee from the HSOC, and I think I understand that one just fine. That was well explained. So my few comments in terms of the housing, I really appreciate the listing of different housing types, that we need that creativity. I was struck on in my little bit of volunteering and communications. I'm always struck by the different we need different housing models. So of course people need individual, they want their own door to lock, but in being in 40 Prado, there's a really awesome community building there too. People don't necessarily want to just be by themselves, shuffled away somewhere. And I just think that we need to be really open to be able to be responsive of kind of cooperative housing that's really non-traditional. So SROs is even still kind of traditional. Are there other ways where we can have something that's, between 40 Prado and an SRO? Anyway, so just to be super open and keep working with those with lived experiences and what they want to be a part of. Staffing, everything that's been said there by Councilmember Christensen. Creativity for what position is named at each thing and adequate funding for it. So I think that's huge. And then just the urgency, this first year of, fires, people basically squatting, those are dangerous, difficult things. And I think I'm glad we're looking at tiny home villages, pallet villages, any of those types of things. And I think we need to take the red X off of tent, kind of in a safe tenting kind of environment, that we're not calling it a sanctioned encampment or any of those other things, but I think that there's a bit of a disparity that somebody has a car and then they can go to a safe parking spot, but if somebody doesn't have a car, then they have to wait for, we're like struggling everything we can to get these 30 pallet shelters. What if we just, striped some 10 by 10 boxes with chalk and had the same level of supervision and people could put a tent down? It's not the long-term solution. It's not going to manage the people who don't want to be managed. Right? It's not the panacea by any means. But I do think that there is an urgency to be able to have just another place where people can be encouraged to go, and then those folks who really are unwilling to get services and are doing dangerous things, it starts to filter out, those folks start to stand out, and then I think we have more options to be able to address those really dangerous behaviors and decisions. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, I'll be brief because I agree with almost everything that my colleagues have said. And on the questions, I agree with Councilmember Pease. They're good questions that I think, county staff, city staff, as we continue to move forward, we have to kind of keep refining this process, right? And answering these questions as we go. We don't know what funds are going to be out there, what niche funding sources we're going to find to be able to solve some of these problems. And so I think some of these will not just have very definite answers right now. They'll be a work in progress, as might be the action committee and how it interacts with the Homeless Services Outreach Committee. And I'm curious to see how that unfolds. I tend to think that in this county, we specialize in committees, in coordinating committees. So, they're all well-meaning, they all do really good work, but sometimes we have coordinating committees to coordinate coordinating committees. And so I don't want us to, over-committee ourselves. We tend to do that. So just be really thoughtful about that going forward. I'll just echo some of the comments about, I think everybody's going in the right track in talking about diverse housing types and the need for that across the county and coordinating between jurisdictions, because none of our jurisdictions are big enough, and we're not a big urban area where we can have different types of supportive housing, and pallet homes and a shelter all in one city. We're too rural for that. So we need to coordinate across the different jurisdictions in order to create that type of diverse housing structure. And I also don't want us to forget things like assisted living and some of the, we've talked about pallet homes and shelters. I know we have the recuperative care program at 40 Prado, and we have some similar things that sort of fold in healthcare with homelessness. But we've got an aging homeless population, and they have a lot of medical needs, a lot of dementia, and some of those things need a really high level of care that we don't have any of in this county. So I want to make sure that we keep that in the back of our minds as well as a whole person approach. It's not just the housing that people need, it's housing first, but then they need behavioral health services, they need addiction services, they need to be able to keep their pet with them. You can't create a happy whole person that is stable without incorporating healthcare along with all the other things that we've talked about. So, nursing services and case management, and also data sharing systems. I know that was discussed already. All of these agencies, people hop around from one agency to the next, and they have 12 case managers because every agency has a case manager that's assigned to this person. And so if those case managers don't have a way of sharing good data between each other and knowing what everybody else is doing and who's had recent contacts, we're just going to keep spinning. So I think, and just one sort of anecdotal story about a homeless person, and this kind of goes to those really difficult folks out there that all our agencies have a lot of touches with. The nurse navigator that works in my unit talks about one individual that she's worked with that says they don't like other homeless people. So they keep to themselves. They have their own encampment. They keep their encampment very clean, very safe. This is their perspective of thing, but they don't want to be around other homeless people. So Prado is not their thing. So they're going to stay out on the street alone to themselves, safely, they feel, but they're going to stay out there. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I think this regional approach is so great, and I'm very thankful for the supervisors to have made this a priority, because I feel that when we're working on this together, we can actually make a significant change in people's lives. I think that's really important. I do think that the volunteers aspect or community aspect of this plan needs to be bolstered. There are a lot of DIY social workers out there, and they're not intending to ever get licensed. But I can think of 5 people off the top of my head that either have vouchers or they've gone through part of the process and they can't get housing for many reasons. And when they're popping back and forth between different agencies and different caseworkers, even if they had all the data in the world, all of a sudden they lost all their paperwork, so it doesn't matter, they're starting all over again. So I'm just, using that example, I just feel like there's gotta be some way additional people can help, because there's a trust factor that you just mentioned, Councilmember Shoresman, that sometimes the individuals that are unhoused only have trust for a few people, and they may not be the people who are part of the institution. So that's just something I think about often, and trying to figure out how that fits into this plan. And I think as we look at those who just don't want to be, or those who don't want to be housed, yes, I remember going to the shower of the people area, and some people I spoke to, they had some PTSD and they had some other things going on that I could never myself diagnose, of course, and they're never going to be in a home, and that's their own personal choice, unless maybe there's some psychological help that some of the individuals get, but by the time that happens, who knows? And I'm very excited about all the people that work on these things, but just knowing that some people just are never going to want to do that, what do we do? But I look at this 50%, and that's when I say, okay, then maybe they're in that 50% that's not quite being helped yet. If we can help the 2,050 or whatever the number works out to be in 5 years, that's still a huge, huge help in our community. I know your love for tents, Councilmember Pease, I really do, and I appreciate the, like, I mean, I appreciate the, let's look at all different options, and I think that's very true. And I'm also just wondering, how do we manage that with law enforcement and the other complementary parts that come with that? And I don't know what that looks like, and that's where I let the experts do that. But I mean, I think it's true. We can't take anything off the table. And of course, this picture keeps coming in my head, though, of like showing up at the drive-in, the drive-in with just no car myself, and it just usually doesn't work out really well. So the other thing is I'm looking at, the need for additional drug and alcohol and substance assistance. I just think that's such a huge factor. It's in the plan, but I'm just hoping there's more to that as we continue, because it seems that there's a connection at times, whether it's a mental health issue being managed through substance or a mental health issue coming from substance abuse, or none of the above. I just feel like there's a lot of variables that are in there, and that we don't have enough beds. We don't have enough beds in the PUF. We don't have enough beds at the MAT, and I just look at how do we get more help in that space. And hopefully it's temporary for a lot of people, but it's needed. And then I know we've done a lot of work on grants ourselves in the city, and I know that the county has gotten a great deal of money, and hey, there's $97 billion that the state has, so maybe we can continue to get more for that, and that's what I know everyone will be working on, so that's fantastic. And as far as the action committee, different from the HSOC, that seems to be relatively clear. I don't know that the general community will understand that enough, so I hope there's a lot of communication that goes out for that. And in the way, just encouraging the county to maybe not ask the normal people you always ask for eyes on outreach. There's just been some recent posts that I look at and go, is that person alive that's on that step? What's happening there? And I think there's just have some other people looking at these that maybe, you know, as we're working on a project, it becomes so known to us that we miss some really obvious things that are right in front of us. So I just really encourage, again, just the outreach to get different opinions and help will help all of us be more successful. I think I had one more thing, so hold on here, sorry. Oh, and I'm really excited about the pocket guide. I think that's going to be absolutely fabulous. I know at Cal Poly, where I work, when we have the little enrollment pocket guide and we can show everyone what we're doing, people really love that, and that we can carry that in our briefcases, our purses, our back pockets, whatever it may be. And as far as the plan on the HSOC website that I see, the 41 page, I noticed that the date for the survey is comments received by June 30th, and I'm just hoping there's a little bit more time for people to give feedback, because today might be the first day people even have heard about this coming out. So just a thought. And lastly, I agree with all of my colleagues and yourselves that the IT is going to be, the data is going to be so important. If it doesn't communicate with each other, then we're going to continue spinning like we are now and have been for a while. And lastly, I remember when 50 Now first came out, I was part of United Way, and we really need to continue to work on our most vulnerable, and what do we do for people who, it's more than just a house, really needing actual medical care, et cetera, and the healing of that once they get their medical care is really important. And so if we can expand that, I see that being necessary. So, any other comments from my colleagues? Okay, I think we have all we need. What do you think?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I think we've got everything. So just to be clear, we're going to kind of put this together in a letter. So it'll come probably from Michael, myself, or Kelsey, or Teresa. We'll give it to Joe. It'll be kind of our notes and comments on what we heard from the council. As you mentioned, Mayor, the plan was just released last Thursday, so we're sorting through the plan right now, and so I'm sure Joe will have more opportunity to kind of go through the plan in detail and comment on the specific strategies and actions. But I just want to, behalf of city staff, I just want to thank, the supervisor, Rebecca, everyone for coming tonight from the county, Joe, for all of their work, from our partners with Capslo, who have been here every step of the way throughout the pandemic, the thick and thin, and so it has really taken everyone, Chief Agson, Chief Scott, our officer in the back, Bettina, it has been really everyone working on this, so thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone coming today. Oh, yes, thank you, Susan, if you are still there. Chairperson Funk, Councilmember Funk. All right, next we're going to, oh, sorry. Thank you, Susan, sorry. Okay, next we'll be doing, having a study session item before us, the pavement management update. And
What, you guys aren't leaving?
thank you, everybody.
Thing in the entire universe. Yeah, right?
So they've got to do their work. We just talked about.
So Madam Mayor and members of the council, as Hai and Matt come up and our consultant, we've got a presentation tonight. We're happy to shorten it or lengthen it depending on your interest. The intent of tonight was to demystify our pavement management strategy, and so I'm hearing consensus that you've dug into the staff report. It was thorough, it was complete. We'll just run you through the slide deck tonight, and we'll give an opportunity for the council to ask some questions.
Thank you so much.
I only said that because Matt told me I could, so.
Absolutely, Derek. So we have 30 slides, but we can talk pavement management anywhere from 15 minutes to 15 days. There's just like the breadth and depth.
15 days, yeah.
15 minutes. Yeah, so we can definitely do that. And, honestly, tonight we brought forth an all-star team to talk to you about pavement management. These are not the people that you see every day in front of council talking about different items. These are our delivery staff for our capital program. I'm so proud to introduce Hai Nguyen. He's our senior civil engineering and capital projects. You most likely have seen his name on 27 staff reports in the last month or so. Hai produces an incredible amount of work for the city. In fact, tonight you awarded, I believe, a $4 or $5 million paving project. That was Hai's. A couple meetings ago, you awarded a couple of sewer projects and a water project and a curb ramp project. That was Hai's. So Hai does an amazing job for the city, and it can't be overstated. So thank you so much, Hai, and he's going to do a great job for us tonight in pavement management. But this is his first presentation to council, so some grace. But to back Hai up, we have Joe Ryrie with Pavement Engineering. Joe is a big deal in the pavement space. I mean, in the pavement management area, Joe is a rock star. Granted, it's a narrow band of people who follow pavement management. Joe is highly regarded. In fact, if you go to any pavement technical seminar and or training, you'll likely be talking with Joe or someone that was taught by Joe about pavement management. And so to back up these two, we have Greg Cruz over here with our Deputy Director of Maintenance Operations. There's a whole process for pavement management, and maintenance is integrated into that. And then, of course, paving takes money and coordination with other projects, and so we have Brian Nelson, Deputy Director and City Engineer, here to support that, and Chelsea Moore, who actually manages the program of projects that makes it through here. So with that, I'll drop it off with Hai. 15 minutes or so, man?
Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, council members. The recommendation for tonight's study session is to receive a presentation from city staff and from Mr. Joe Ryrie from Pavement Engineering about the city pavement management plan. Roadways are the city's biggest asset at 135 centerline miles and counting. Replacement cost is estimated at approximately $700 million, not including sidewalk or curb and gutters. This is why it's so critical to maintain roadway in good conditions. And one fact to note is that the city has been able to maintain roadway in good conditions with only a budget of approximately $3 million. And that is less than 0.5% of the total replacement cost. And when we talk about pavement, we always talk about the pavement condition index. It is very important to understand this rating system because goals are established based on PCI values. Previous and current adopted policies are based on PCI values. It was established by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's a numerical rating system between 0 and 100, and the minimum desirable PCI that we're looking for is 70, and that describes a pavement in good condition, whereas a pavement that has completely failed will have a PCI of 30 or less. The previous 1998 pavement management plan divided the city into 9 distinct paving zones. Working with defined areas ensures that attention is distributed throughout the city, and the plan adopted a policy to maintain pavement at PCI equal 80. In 2009, Council defined new goals for all street types with emphasis on arterials, because arterials such as South Higuera and Broad Street carry the bulk of the traffic, and the policy established the #1 priority to maintain arterials to be in good condition, and established 90% of all arterials to have a PCI of 70 or greater, and establish a goal to have the local streets have 70% of all local streets being in good conditions. And this slide shows the 9 zones within the city of San Luis Obispo. As you can see, the local streets are in great conditions. With 82% of all local streets have PCI values of 70 or greater. However, arterials collectors in the downtown areas need improvements with average PCI below 70. And to address this in the coming year, more emphasis will be placed on arterials and collectors with the 2023 paving project. This paving work in 2023 is expected to increase the PCI to 70 and put 60% of all arterials in good condition. Furthermore, with council approval to award the summer sealing work, which include pavement sealing in the downtown area, this work is expected to improve the current condition of the downtown area and increase the PCI from 56 to 70 and put 88% of the downtown area to be in good condition. And now I'm going to pass it on to our pavement technical expert, Joe, to talk about pavement engineering.
Thank you, Hi. Mayor and members of the council, I got to tell you, I'm really excited to be here. I am a longtime resident of San Luis Obispo, having lived here for over the last 30 years, and usually I'm doing this at cities all throughout the rest of California, so it's really exciting to be able to be here and presenting to you. Pardon me? Oh, okay, yeah, that's it. We'll have one thing on the back, yeah. Okay, so I was asked to cover just a couple of items tonight, talk about Pavement 101s, give some basics for you and the listening public, because I know there's more people that are listening that didn't stick around. Okay, and to talk a little bit about some pavement management principles. So what makes the pavement section? Well, when you think of a pavement that you're driving on, there are two forces that we're looking at. One is the loading on top and whatever it's built on. The worse the condition is and the more loading on top, the thicker that pavement needs to be able to withstand the traffic and the traffic loading. Pavements are really interesting. They don't deteriorate in a linear fashion. They deteriorate just like what we show right here. This is called a pavement deterioration curve, and it kind of has a little bit of an S shape to it. Pavements look good for a while, and they drop off quickly, and we've seen that. We've driven down the road and go, hey, when did this road get so bad? It's because it hits that point and starts falling off. So asphalt pavements deteriorate in two different ways. They deteriorate environmentally from the oxidizing effects of sun and water, and then also from just the fatigue loading of heavy traffic as it travels on the pavement. So to explore this just a little bit more and talk about the impact of the sun and the water, the asphalt is held together, or the pavement is held together, all the aggregate is by oil. And as that oil is exposed to oxygen and sun and the ultraviolet rays, it age hardens and becomes brittle and hard. And then it actually will lose some of its mass and shrink. And so that's where we start getting that cracking in the pavement. As that cracking starts to open up, that allows water to be able to get in and destroy the underlying structure that we were counting on in order for that pavement to withstand the loading. So that's the environmental side of things. This is the impact of heavy loads. And so we were trying to figure out many, many years ago how we could describe the phenomenon of heavy traffic on loads. And so we took a Chevy S10 Blazer, which was just a small little SUV at the time, several years ago, and we weighed it on one of those weigh scales. And we then compared it to different kinds of trucks. And we looked at it from the number of axles that they had. So a typical 2-axle truck is equal to 442 Chevy S10 Blazers. One fully loaded 5-axle truck that's delivering to Vaughn's or any of the other areas around here can equal up to almost 15,000 Chevy S10 Blazers. Pretty impactful. Garbage trucks are almost 10,000. And so when we designed our roads a long time ago, we designed them for 1 garbage truck trip per week. Well, now we're running 3. And so when we design the roads, we try and build in like a bank account in there. And when the every time a heavy vehicle goes over it, there's a withdrawal. And as soon as that bank account hits 0, the road starts showing signs of that. And so we're consuming our pavements pretty quick with these heavier vehicles. The Amazon delivery phenomenon, the FedEx trucks that are always out there, they're impacting our pavements. So these are different kinds of common distresses that you can drive around and see. The first 3 are all environmental types of distresses. You can see the pavement beginning to shrink with the longitudinal and block cracking. But the 4th one on the right, that's alligator cracking, and that's where the pavement is bending and flexing from the heavy loads. And so when we see alligator cracking, we know that the pavement is in fatigue distress and is likely structurally deficient. Its bank account is 0. So let's talk about the PCIs that Hai was mentioning. So a road with absolutely no distresses in it at all, we count that as 100. It's a scale from 100 down to 0. This is Higuera Street, just paved, no distresses. It gets counted as 100. You also have a road in town. We were debating whether or not to reveal this, or maybe make it a public type of participation survey monkey thing or whatever, Who can guess where this road is and what its name is? And give them I don't know, whatever. Oh yeah, it could be really fun. Anyway, but yes, there is a road in San Luis Obispo, and this is what it looks like. And you can see that it's struggling and has quite a bit of distresses. I think this might be Monterey many, many years ago, but I'm not sure. But I want to let you know that it just reminds us why we have roads in the first place. Okay, so let's talk about pavement management principles quickly, because I'm feeling Matt saying, Joe, stop talking about pavement. Okay, so this is the basic principle. Applying the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time using the right materials. That's our guideline. And when we follow that, really good things happen. So being an engineer, we need to show it graphically because it means more to us, right? And so remember our deterioration curve. There's that sliding curve. Well, what that statement is telling us is that there's certain points along the curve that you actually get more bang for your bucks and when you spend it. Let me give a couple of really quick examples. Up at the top of the curve, when the pavement is just beginning to shrink and start to crack, that's a great time to apply crack sealing to it. Seal up the cracks, keep the water out, and you get a lot of mileage out of it. The next step down is your slurry seals. That's like sunscreen for the pavement. Being able to put that over the pavement and protect the pavement against the ultraviolet rays, that's what you want to try and do. Way at the bottom of the curve is reconstruct. Well, to illustrate the point of doing the right treatment at the right time, you don't take crack sealing and do it on a pavement that's down at the very bottom. Just like you wouldn't take a pavement that's really good condition and reconstruct it. It doesn't make any sense. This really cool slide, very busy, is supposed to illustrate how, oh, wait a minute. See, I'm feeling the rushing part here, Matt, but I gotta go back and talk about this for a second, okay? I get to drive all on streets throughout California, and every time I come home, I see the work of the city crews here. These guys are awesome. They're out there doing the best that they can. They're crack sealing when they're supposed to be crack sealing. The city staff, the award that you put out was for a slurry seal project. You know, kudos to you guys, because that's doing the right treatment at the right time. And so I want to point out that the city of San Luis Obispo is really doing a pretty decent job stretching those dollars and following the pavement principles that are excellent guidelines. Okay, now we can go to this next slide. That shows the impact of if you follow that red line, that's our deterioration curve, and the green part is saying, okay, we're starting to deteriorate. But if we look at the blue part, that's the maintenance treatment. So we apply a slurry seal, and it extends the pavement life, and then we'll do another slurry seal, and it'll extend the pavement life. If you don't do that and you let it deteriorate all the way down, it will actually it ends up costing more. Your pavements aren't in very good condition, but this is what I'm watching the city of San Luis Obispo do, is doing the right things here. So when you're managing your pavements, there's really only 3 ways that I've learned over my career to manage pavements, and that you either apply a best first approach or a worst first approach, or what's called a critical management point of view. So you have limited dollars, and you're trying to figure out where to spend those dollars. And one group will tell you, oh, you need to keep your best streets in good condition all the time. Well, if you do that, it's not going to be sustainable. You're going to end up with a group of good streets and a group of bad streets and nothing in the middle. If you're always spending your money on the worst streets and trying to pick from the bottom of the list, then what you're going to do is spend the very most amount of money. You've got limited budget, and so you're only going to be touching just a few streets. So the way that you want to try and manage your pavements is using what's called a critical point management style. And to illustrate that, we go back to our curve, and what you're trying to do is try to pick your pavements at these spots that are circled in red. And what that's supposed to illustrate is you're letting the pavement deteriorate right before it drops to the next treatment. Catch it right before and apply that treatment. And that's where you get that bump up, back up again and extend that pavement life. So when you're managing your pavements, you don't pick just your best parts or your worst parts. You try and pick pavements from all of these different points of impact, or these critical points. And there's some significant dollars that are associated with each of these different points along the way. And if you look at the table to your right, you can see that if you're working in the upper range, you're only talking about pennies per square foot. When you get down in the lower range, you're talking about a lot of money per square foot. And so you want to try and manage your pavements appropriately. The other thing, when you're dealing with those really costly reconstruct modes, the industry is getting really clever at not having to reconstruct roads. We're actually recycling roads. So we're taking those aggregates that are already in place and recycling them and blending them together and recreating new asphalt, and then compacting it or new road base, and then placing new asphalt over the top of it. And there's several other techniques that we're using in terms of recycling methods and taking advantage of what's already there. Not only is that saving money from a construction point of view, but you're saving all of the trucking, so you're being not as impactful with oh, help me, it just slipped away. Yes, thank you very much. You could be doing this. Come on down. Anyway, so that's what we're see how you could talk about pavement for 15 days? It just doesn't take long. You just start going. Anyway, but sustainable paving strategies. This was actually done on Madonna Road. It's called full depth reclamation. Great treatment. You'll get 20 plus more years out of that road, taking what was there and reusing it. So great strategy. And with that, I get to be quiet, and we'll turn over to Greg here.
Thank you, Joe. Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Greg Cruz with Public Works. So tonight, just want to briefly get my papers to stay on the podium first. Talk about the streets crew work and the streets crew and the work they do. The crew is going to be coming larger in the coming months, thanks to the support of the council and the new downtown maintenance program. But currently, here's the makeup of the staff. And so, in addition to the pavement zone work that I'll get to in a few minutes, I just want to talk about some other tasks that the streets crew performs. They respond to approximately 650 work orders and service requests annually. Those work orders consist of repair and replacement of street signs, addressing potholes, removing hazards in the roadways, sidewalk displacements, and storm preparation and patrol. The program currently sweeps approximately 5,000 miles of street annually and provides weekly traffic control for the farmers market. In addition to that, staff is available for 24/7 response, and we routinely assist our partners in public safety with unplanned events and emergencies. So there's always a streets person to answer the phone when needed. So before we get on to the exciting stuff, I do want to touch base on potholes. So we talked about it. Streets crew is out weekly. It's a job that never ends. It's like, painting the Golden Gate Bridge. But more importantly, how to report a pothole. So we do have some developments on the horizon that's very exciting. We'll be coming back to you folks in the next couple months to share with that. But in the meantime, we've got Report an Issue on our city website. Whitney touched on it this morning. It's on the main city's webpage. So by reporting an issue, you get a list. I'm sure you've all been on there, but streets maintenance, one of them. Enter the information, it turns it into an email, and then we'll turn that into a work order and send staff out to address that appropriately. In addition to that, you can call either the Public Works lines, and our wonderful admin assistants are willing to help you take the information, put it in the work order system, and again, crews will address it. So now on to the exciting stuff, the pavement zone work. So as you know, the city's divided into 9 pavement management zones. And for a small city like our size, a crew of 12, we have a fairly impressive, as Joe mentioned, impressive and progressive pavement program that we go into the pavement zones. So the streets maintenance program, they move through the zones numerically. When they get into the zones, the length of work varies based on the size of the zone and the work needed, but a year is about an average timeline that it takes to get through each zone. So once in the zone, paving crew will go in, and their first major focus is base failure repairs. And so what that consists of is milling and filling is what's called in the industry, but it's grinding out deteriorated sections of pavement and repaving those sections. After that, the paving crew then moves on to the crack sealing Joe talked about. While that's going on, the concrete works simultaneously with the paving crew, and their first order of business in the pavement zones is to grind sidewalk displacements, and then move on to permanent repairs made on sidewalks, driveway approaches, and curb and gutters that is damage caused by city street tree. So once the sidewalks crew done with their concrete work, the pavement crew's done with the pavement and crack sealing work, they regroup, they go through the zone, replace kind of minor stuff like broken or missing signs, and then refresh curb paintings and markings on the street. So that's kind of just a quick, brief overview of the streets crew work, both citywide and within the pavement zones, and that concludes my section. I'll now turn it over to Brian Nelson, city engineer.
Thanks, Greg. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, Brian Nelson, city engineer. I just want to reiterate what the streets crew does for the pavement plan. Their preparatory work is essentially equates to a decrease in cost to the city for the capital project budget. So the 2 years of work that they do really offsets us contracting that work out to a contractor who would in fact charge more for that work as part of a paving project. So I definitely can't understate the work that the streets crew performs for us there. This slide really, the intent here is to depict the pavement management plan for the next 7 years. This pavement plan was developed in early 2021 based on the additional revenues that we received through Measure G20. This paving plan was based upon the funding recommendations in the current financial plan for the streets that we could accommodate within the plan seen above. So in 2023, we're planning on a substantial pavement effort on the Monterey, Johnson, Grand, Santa Barbara, Higuera, and Monterey, and Orchid streets based upon the budget in the current financial plan. So one of the things that has become evident over the last year, and you've seen tonight in your consent calendar, is the significant increase in paving costs we've seen due to the significant increases in material prices and the decrease in available labor resulting in those additional costs being passed to the city for contract services. Just to reiterate, with the Measure G20 passage and the funding available through the state gas tax, that additional budget really added on to our past pavement plans and provided additional funding for expanding our pavement management program in the coming years. So again, looking forward, we will likely need additional funding based upon the increase in costs we're seeing. But for the last year alone, in 2021, we were able to accomplish a significant work effort with the downtown paving project that we would not have been able to achieve without the passage of Measure G and the additional funding, as well as the gas tax revenue received through the state's SB1 tax measure. Just to reiterate too, in the next financial plan, due to the increases in cost, you'll likely see in the 23-25 financial plan recommendations an increase in funding to accommodate the extra costs that we're seeing for paving in the future. But if we are in fact able to achieve the projects outlined in the 2023 list here, that would result in an increase of PCI on the arterials from 62 to 70. So a significant increase in cost if we're able to accomplish the projects outlined. Next slide, please. This slide is really intended to show the actual construction cost information for recent maintenance projects. As you can see, the overall construction budgets markedly increased after 2021, as I just mentioned. The other thing that this slide really demonstrates with our cost information is the highly effective nature of routine maintenance. Regular maintenance is about 10 to 20 times less expensive on a unit cost basis than heavy maintenance and basically letting the roads get to a condition where more expensive treatments are required. Also on this slide, there's a couple pictures I just wanted to highlight. in terms of traffic control management. The picture on the left is from the work on South Broad Street, which the picture's at night, so just wanted to bring that up. You know, when staff plan these projects, we try to minimize impacts to the community and surrounding, you know, businesses and commuters. So the 2019 paving project was done at night just to avoid that daily commute traffic that we see through the South Broad corridor there by the airport. And looking forward to our future pavement projects, including this slurry sealing project. We coordinate closely with our transportation division, including Luke Schwartz, who has a hand in developing the traffic control recommendations to try to avoid those impacts. So in the slurry seal project, work will begin after September 1st, and the contractor will be limited to, you know, no more than, well, they'll have to keep 2 lanes open at a time to minimize any traffic impacts downtown. On the next slide, just wanted to highlight some other elements that we consider. Of course, the primary goal of pavement management is to maintain the roadways in good condition, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. One of the great benefits of this rotating and methodical approach to pavement is that it also provides a great opportunity for us to implement complete streets improvements in conjunction with the roadway projects. The implementation of complete streets projects makes the roadway safer for all users and includes the elements in the pictures here, such as bike lanes, speed humps, traffic circles, and high visibility crosswalks. Construction of these elements in conjunction with the roadway projects achieves the economies of scale and reduces the cost of implementing those elements if they were to be their own separate project. Complete streets elements are based upon adopted plans, such as the active transportation plan, downtown concept plan, safer routes to school plan, among others. The transportation planning program within Public Works in lead up to the projects holds virtual workshops, coordinates with Downtown SLO and other groups that may be impacted directly by the projects. And they also coordinate neighborhood surveys with the neighborhood that would benefit or see safety improvements from the projects. And that work leads up to a year in advance of those projects and is an ongoing effort as we push those projects out for construction. Just also want to mention that we coordinate this work with Slow Transit as well, because a lot of these projects have impacts to bus stops, so some closures are needed, but we're coordinating with them and the public at large as we see these under construction. So with that, I'll hand it back to Matt Horn, I believe. We're on the last slide.
So this is my favorite slide, and so it's the last one, and sorry for going a little bit long. But in 2021, the New Times came out with different award winners for different types of things. So the best hamburger, best beer, best use of taxpayer money was, I think it was best beer. I think they had that, but I don't know. The road repair was the best use of taxpayer money in 2021. And so there's no better gratification of being a public servant, providing a service that people like and value. And so that's roadway paving for the community at large. This is countywide. But it also kind of goes together with the products that we provide here in the city. And so we're just not maintaining pavement, we're transforming our transportation systems with each project that we're doing. And we couldn't do that without council support and funding, just like tonight, bringing forth many different component projects for the project that we awarded tonight. Like, so the slurry seal project this evening had parking lot money in it, had pathway money in it, had water and sewer money in it. So it's really a multifaceted project that we're doing in those areas. And so that is pavement in a nutshell in San Luis Obispo. We did go longer than I thought, Derek, so I apologize, but we're here for questions. Thank you.
It was a fantastic report, though. I mean, really interesting about pavement, things that I would have never thought about. The one question that I did ask the city manager is, how do I possibly envision what, let's see, 135 center line miles of roadway equals? And I think the answer was from here to Anaheim? Is that kind of the best way to picture it?
Disneyland. Here to Disneyland, so imagine both lanes, so.
Both lanes. Oh, I thought just one lane. Oh, okay. Just as if we picture like our little city and people are picturing each street, it probably doesn't really make the full picture in their minds of how much work this is. So thank you for all of your hard work. Any initial questions from the council remarks?
I have no questions, and thank you for a very comprehensive report.
Great, thank you. And any public comment, City Clerk?
No, we do not.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just asked council remarks and forgot there are other people here. Councilmember Pease.
Thank you so much. It was a super interesting presentation. I do have a few questions, and I just want to frame them in the sense that, some questions are curiosity. I'm leaving those aside. What I'm seeing here, kind of as a takeaway, is that we need another $3 or $4 million every year to maintain this pavement. I mean, right? That's. I'm interpreting this correctly. That we are having a study session in order to kind of be prepared that come the next budget cycle, it's going to be almost double. And so I have some follow-up questions, but I just want to make sure that that's really kind of what this time is about.
Well, this time's, for a couple different reasons. One, it's been a long time since paving plan has been to council, so it's been, what's that, 14 years, 13 years? So bringing it back to council, reminding council what we're doing, and also redescribing council's goals for the community. Additionally, yes, there will need to be future budget requests if we want to meet council's priorities as established in 2009. So, but also too is we are going through an extraordinarily robust time in construction cost increases. So I think a couple weeks ago we talked about another project that has gone up in value. So in the last 18 months, construction costs have gone up 30%. And so we expect that to keep on climbing with all petroleum-based construction, and road paving is both petroleum-based with the product and actually the application itself. Yeah. So yes, there will be future budget requests. Yes, will it fit into the framework for the different priorities council has? Yes, will we get the actual dollar amount that we think we need? Probably not, but we will manage to deliver those projects as they're outlined to the best of our ability.
So, thank you. And so the pavement plan right now, we're not really proposing to change it. We're just kind of presenting, right? It's working the way it's supposed to, is what I'm hearing. And we're kind of bringing it back so that we kind of all know and see if this council has any questions or updates, right?
Sure. It's a reminder to council of our paving plan, kind of.
But no proposed major changes.
There's no proposed major changes, but it's also a look under the hood of all the different components of how the city implements the paving plan.
Yeah.
So it's not just as simple as maintaining asphalt. We're doing a lot of other things with it.
Yeah, super. It's great to hear the mix of staff and the critical point management. I mean, that it's super helpful. So I guess my couple of questions. One, there was in the some of the resources they talked about trenching as being a major point of roads failing if they're not, because that just starts to make things shift around. Are our trenching kind of, and the recommendation is to, if a private project has to do a trench that they then have to repave like that whole half of the street, I feel like, are we doing that? What's our trenching policy, and are the private projects adequately contributing to the maintenance of our streets if they're contributing to it?
Yeah, though that's an excellent question. The city has. If you look at the range of cities in the area, and you look at the range of different soil types in the area, and you look at the range of different trenching details that are in this area, they range wildly. Some cities are more conservative than our city for backfill and pavement replacement over the top of the trench. Some people are far less conservative. I believe the city of San Luis Obispo is in the even area of making a private trench, private developer, private installation, maintain, install a good facility that does not provide negative, long-lasting ramifications for our roadway section. So it's not overburdensome. It's very standard. We have we have some good inspection staff that ensure that it's adequately done. And I believe it's the sweet spot between not being overly regulatory and and then bringing on a large liability for the city.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. It seemed I had asked earlier about kind of the current PCI average and then what it's going to be after this next round. So it sounds like for arterials, once this current upcoming project is done, we'll go from 62 to 70, right? So that's kind of getting us back into the good zone. Yes, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so, do we ever catch up?
No, we don't. We own a decaying asset, and you saw the degradation curve. It's much. We own it in perpetuity. This is a process that will go through in perpetuity until we decide or come up with a new methodology for covering our roadway surfaces with a different product or different mobility technology changes drastically.
Okay. Thanks. Just two more questions. So I know that in that plan, it shows that our target for average is 80. And I remember asking Darrell Grigsby about this a gazillion years ago, and he's, it was almost like, that number doesn't matter, because I was like, God, that just seems too high. Does it matter? Is that like a set target, or are we just going for good and the critical point management? And is that something that we need to revisit?
Well, Joe, would you give us your professional opinion on this?
I'd be happy to, Matt.
Thank you.
The best way to think about this is the higher the PCI, actually the less money you spend to maintain. And so when Hai mentions we're striving for a 70 PCI, in the industry, we refer to when you hit the 70 mark as an average as a city, you're entering the maintenance mode. So you're entering that part of where you're going to be doing more maintenance at less cost than you will be in the rehabilitation mode. And 80 actually has a couple of different benefits for a city. Not only does it move you more solidly in the maintenance mode, and if you were to do the analysis over time, you'll find that you're spending less money and keeping your streets in better condition. But all of the SB1 funding that is available to us, when you hit an 80 as a city, the amount of paperwork drops, and it also allows you to do more things with that money than just focus on your pavements. And so it's a great goal to have, to move towards that. It is a difficult goal to reach and to sustain, but there are benefits to being there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I confess I'm just skeptical. I just kind of come into this suspicious of a city that has such nice streets when there's like homeless people. Honestly, I mean, it is.
Rolling over. Rolling over.
I'm just like, I don't know. I look at the street, our street, and it's like, oh my God, they're gonna pave it again. They're gonna reseal it because it looks fine. So it's just, I confess it's my own thing, I guess. Because if you're telling me you've crunched the numbers, I have to believe that. Okay, then my last one is just on the sustainability, which is about there was something in here that you can use 15% recycled asphalt and or anything more than that, and the thing will fail. And again, skeptical, like, really? Or is the industry, wanting to use more of this material? Can we use more recycled content? Okay, then I'm done.
I'm loving your questions. They're great. So we are trying to recycle. Actually, asphalt is almost 100% recyclable. And when you do an asphalt project, you get a lot of credit for that recyclability. As an industry, we found that we can recycle up to 15% of what we call RAP, recycled asphalt pavement, back into the mixes. And but more than that, it starts to become problematic. Caltrans keeps experimenting with trying to use more. But if you think about it, we talked about the binder, the asphalt that's there. If you're grinding it off and you've paved roads at different times and it's deteriorated differently, that binder isn't all the same. And so that's where the wrap problem comes in, is because that binder is different. And so you have to do a lot of extra testing on it in order to be able to have it function like it's supposed to. So that's, we want to recycle, but we find that 15% is about the threshold before it starts getting cumbersome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Shorsman.
I think what I'm hearing is ultimately we need vehicles to waver just to hover just above the street. And then our streets will last forever, right?
Almost. Remember, it's environmental and fatigue. And so even
there you go.
if,
Okay.
remember those first three slides, if we never even saw any weight on it, we would still have the deterioration happening.
Well, I digress. That wasn't my real question. But my two questions are about the planning process, or the process of choosing which roads to do when. I think somewhere in the staff report it talked about a cycle of rotating between neighborhood roads one year and arterial roads the next, and neighborhood, arterial, that sort of pattern. And I think that was visualized in your slides where you showed different zones versus different arterial roads, and outlined a year, every other year. I'm wondering if, because our arterial road quality, our PCI numbers, seem like they're a lot worse in our arterial and collector streets, is that pattern still appropriate? Should we be catching up on our arterial roads a couple years in a row instead of doing the neighborhood roads, which are in better condition? Just a question.
I can talk about the planning element to that. So every 2 years, the city does a pavement survey. We hire a firm who actually drives every single street in town. We just did this, I think, early this year as well. So they scan every roadway. They tell us what the PCI is for that roadway. We get it in our Street Saver software, which shows us the PCI has color coding for every street. And what we do is we take that map and we basically look at, it's that critical point management aspect of it. Which roads are at that point where if we maintain them for less money in our next pavement plan, could we bring it up to a maintenance level? Could we bring it over 70 and continue to maintain that further? Because as Joe pointed out, continual maintenance is a lower cost over time compared to heavy maintenance and reconstruct work. So that kind of process is done every 2 years. We look at how the pavement's changing based on that assessment, and we might replan from what we showed up there. Things might shift around a bit, but we try to tailor that to the money available. And by doing every other year as a neighborhood pavement project, maintaining those good streets, it does prevent those streets from dropping into the maintenance zone, which would cost more money. So it's that balance that's really hard to achieve within the funding limitations, but the strategy has worked well to maintain the majority of our streets, which are neighborhood streets, in good condition. Because if we let those streets drop below, then we have 70% of our streets that are then potentially costing more. and seeing, heavier and more extreme maintenance to bring them back up. So it's just an ongoing balance, and we strategize, as much as we can. We involve Joe and pavement engineering in that process as well when we need their insight.
That makes sense. I could see then too, it's sort of a way that you could sort of predict the costs maybe a little bit better too. I would imagine if you did arterial roads and collectors 2 consecutive years, for example, then that would be more expensive. It would get our roads up to a higher quality, but then you would get the pattern off, and then the funding would be less stable maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
I'm overthinking it.
And one thing the council has done, and we haven't felt any pressure to comply with the rotation method that we've had. Typically, you will find these people trying to maintain and keep our PCI as high as possible for the least amount of money. And so that's really, our inflection point where we try to hit that. So as a president in 2014, we combined a multiple areas ceiling tactic because it saved us money. It saved us money, and it was we were able to do more at once with the same level of staff effort to do that. And so it made sense. At some point in time when it doesn't make sense anymore, these folks have always had the ability to say, hey, let's do something different. This is why this makes sense, and we will. So, and we've had a lot of council support for that in the past, and if we need to change, we'll bring that to you and let you know the rationale.
Thank you. I think that's all.
Well, thank you. Just a couple more questions. I think I've already asked this question, but it'd just be nice to hear it, I think, in public. I know that you're doing a lot of great work on the website, or communications is. When will the app be coming so that community members can tell you real quickly if they have a pothole question or et cetera?
We just executed the contract with GoGov, and so we'll be deploying it in a beta test with a couple departments this summer. Our lead staff person was unexpectedly out for the past couple weeks, but we'll be getting back on track, and we'll give council members an update with your next monthly update with the city manager.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, definitely wish her good healing. And then going back to the numbers from earlier, I was a little bit perplexed as to where we would find this additional funding for future projects. So I thought you might want to share a little bit about that.
Sure, and we're not asking for, we're not right now. We're planting the seed that, hey, this, if we want to achieve these goals, this is what we think that we'll need to do right now. These gentlemen and lady are very good at finding dollars to leverage for our projects. But what will actually happen will be during the community goal setting process, during the council goal setting process with the 23-25 financial plan, is where these different needs will be laid out. And then our community and you will decide how we want to move forward in the future. And so we're thinking this is where we need to be now, but based on revenues, expenditures, and what we know in, we can start that in February 2023. What we know then is those decisions we'll make then. So.
I was just going to add one thing too. I think as you all have become aware, our paving projects have really become much more than paving a street for cars. And so they've become much more comprehensive and now are focused on pedestrian and bikes. And so with that, while the cost may be going up, we're packaging all of those improvements into one larger project, and I think you'll continue to see that. I think we've had just tremendous success with the last 2 years of paving projects and transforming neighborhoods with just all of the traffic calming measures that are being put in, all the bicycle measures and all the pedestrian, so many more curb ramps going in. So that will continue as well, and so I think, it won't be just $1 million for paving roads. It's a much bigger project each year.
I think that's why we got the award, right? Truly using the efficiencies for whether it's ADA needs or pedestrian needs, et cetera. So thank you. And then on, let's see what page is this? Page 370, around the cool pavement and these cool strategies for sustainable paving in the future. are we looking at utilizing this cool pavement material, or is this something you're just thinking about?
So I'll start, and Brian, if I leave any gaps, jump up. So we looked at the cool pavement technology, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, and generally it was more of a seal over the top of our roadways that changed it from a darker color to a lighter color. We looked at the benefits and the impacts of that, and we weren't sure we were actually solving the problem by doing this. What we learned was the MUTCD, the manual for uniform traffic control devices, may have some issues with the underlying color being a very white color instead of a black color. And then secondarily was the color itself reflects light. So much like when you go snow skiing or something like that, you're actually burning yourself more than not having that reflected back at you. So I didn't think we were actually solving the problem. We were going into kind of very experimental areas and wasn't really achieving, I think, what council wanted. So we looked at it. We said, this is great information. We'll keep on monitoring as this goes through, but this isn't something that we would recommend council move forward with at that time.
Okay, thank you. I picture Mr. Brody standing at the podium many times talking about the dark pavement and the challenges that we may or may not be helping our climate action plan with that, so I appreciate that. I've also seen the solar pavements, and that's very interesting too, but that's a side note. Vice Mayor Christensen.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say it was a really interesting report and very good job, Hi, on your first presentation.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Marks, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't. I just really keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you coming and sharing all of these items. And thank you, Hi. Oh, sorry, I didn't see any public comment. City Clerk? Okay, thank you. Okay, and our next and last public hearing item is introducing an ordinance amending Chapter 2.04 council meeting to modify regular meeting times and amend the council policies and procedures. And City Clerk, would you like to present the report?
Yeah, and I'll keep mine really brief. So, on May 24th at the council workshop, council discussed increasing number of ceremonial items on the agenda and how it was impacting the length of the city council meetings. Council proposed changing to an earlier start time of 5:30 p.m. for regular council meetings. With this change, the ceremonial items will be heard at 5:30 with the goal of having the business items start at 6. If approved, the change would go into effect August 16th, 2022, at the August 16th, 2022 council meeting. So our recommendation, and to make this change, is we must adopt a resolution amending a council policies and procedures manual, which calls out the start time for regular meetings, and also because it's also codified in our municipal code, we have to introduce an ordinance amending municipal code section 2.04 council meetings to modify the regular meeting times. And that concludes my report.
Thank you for a succinct report. And I think that not only does this help potentially, if everyone chooses to do this, this will not only help the council, but also help the community be able to come still after work if necessary, but be able to get back to their families and whatever else they are doing a little sooner too. Council Member Pease.
Thank you, and I do support the resolution and the change of the time, but I feel like I want to clarify that the reasoning behind it, because I feel like we did talk about the ceremonial part taking a long time, but we also came up with strategies to shorten those, which I think are appropriate, and that it seemed like more for the reasons you're saying, that in general, to start the meetings later so they don't end as late. Start the meetings earlier so they don't end as late gives us and the community, the community maybe more access, and then us to kind of be at our best ability to consider each item. So I just want to make sure in the language that we're communicating that we kind of take out that ceremonial part, because I really don't think that was the basis of moving it earlier. There were two related things about the length of the meeting, so.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, I just noticed in the language of the ordinance, I think in the red line, it mentioned the new start time of 5:30 and then also closed session starting at 4:30. But I just wanted to clarify that we don't always have closed session before these meetings, nor do we always have closed session on the same day as the council meeting. So I was just curious as to why the ordinance specified that piece of closed session starting at 4:30.
The way that's written, it's before a regular session. It would start a little earlier than 4:30, basically, for a closed session. But we can switch closed session to any day and start at any time that works for council.
Okay, but we wouldn't start it any earlier than 4:30 if we were doing it before.
That would be the goal.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Marks, any questions?
No, but I would like to move the staff recommendation when the moment is right.
Any public comment? Sorry.
No.
The room is empty, so, Okay, any other comment before Councilmember Marks moves forward a motion? Okay, Councilmember Marks, you're up.
All right, I'd like to move the staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
City Clerk, can you call roll?
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Christensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
Councilmember Pease?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, thank you, and motion passes 5-0, and thrilled that we can help a little bit more with accessibility and potentially alertness as well. All right, so we're moving forward to liaison reports and communications. Councilmember Marks, do you have a liaison report?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Any of my other council members? Councilmember Pease.
Thank you so much. We did have a Groundwater Sustainability Commission meeting last week. And we are monitoring how to implement, try to apply for funding for specific projects and what those priorities are, and getting updates from county staff who's really kind of taking oversight of that. And I do want to share that there is an item in the proposed plan. One of the potential action items is farmers having access to city groundwater, recycled water that we've talked about. And so there's the city staff are doing a study, water utilization study. We're having some conversations over the next couple of weeks. And I just, the agriculturists are pretty anxious to be able to move forward. And so I just wanted folks to know that we are in the midst of the study and the consideration to see if that's a feasible project. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of really great events last week that several of us had an opportunity to go to. The ribbon cutting ceremony at the SLO Rep's new headquarters. That was just really a great opportunity to see and tour their new space, and lots of just really excited families and kids and community members, so very positive. And then the groundbreaking ceremony at Tiburon Place, which is 68, I believe it is, affordable units on Bullock Lane, near, sort of between Rigetti Ranch and Orchid Road. And so just great turnout there, and really exciting to see more affordable units at the very low and low income. Breaking ground, still, a ways away, but breaking ground is a good start. So, and then also Thursday night, Councilmember Pease and I both attended the SLO Climate Coalition general meeting. So good to see them making some progress, and they were getting ready for some Juneteenth events that they were participating in. So good stuff there as well.
Thank you. Yes, I really enjoyed the groundbreaking Tiburon Place and definitely need a new hat, new construction hat that fits my head, but really, truly excited about this. I mean, when I posted on social media, immediately I had people saying, when can I move in? How can I figure this out? And it's like, well, it's going to be a little ways away. It was just a groundbreaking, but, you know, reach out to people's self-help housing, and there's definitely some chances there. I really wanted to thank Bea Makikau, Dr. Bea Makikau. She presented, her and I presented the SLO City DEI Task Force, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Task Force presentation at a federal conference, the Performance Summit, and really excited to be able to provide that information to more people. And then the California Cities, previously known as League of California Cities, attended their Taxation and Revenue Policy Subcommittee at the last one of the year. And there are going to be two very interesting tribal gaming bills in November, and there are already a lot of commercials coming out. I really encourage people to start looking into this now. It's more than the commercials say. And many of the individuals I spoke to locally said this was kind of odd the way things are written, the way they're worded, I should say. So I really encourage you from now through November, don't just believe the hype and the commercials and actually check into it. And then we will be, thankful also for the SLO ribbon cutting, and I wanted to thank NAACP, SLO County, and Paso Peoples for Action for hosting some great Juneteenth events. I really enjoyed speaking in Paso on Saturday, and just, you know, being able to see a great Juneteenth presentation with lots of history and lots of knowledge, as well as not the best movie, but the great conversation around passing and what that's meant from kind of, you know, 30s till now, and the rights and property that people really were trying to fight for, and if they could just kind of pass, they could get more property and more rights, and what that looks like now is a whole different space. So really interesting conversation, and if you're ever interested, I would consider reading the book. But lastly, I will say that we will normally see you at our next regular city council meeting scheduled for July 5th. Yes, right after the holiday at 6 p.m. right here in the city council chambers at 990 Palm Street. However, we will also be having a special meeting on Thursday, the 23rd from 3 to 5. There will not be any business decided, but no?
I just want to we've noticed it as a meeting. It is because there are 3 or more council members that have confirmed attendance at the iFixit. So
I have it 3 to 5. Yeah, 3 to 5.
It's 3 to 5, correct.
It'll be at Upper Monterey Business Visit. We'll be starting off at 1330 Monterey Street at iFixit and learning a little bit more about that area and some potential desired plans. So, like I said, nothing will be decided, but it will be occurring. So, thank you very much for all of your time, and we'll see you Thursday or next week, on the 5th. Happy 4th of July for anyone we will not see before that. Thanks and good night.